addiction. This isn't an invisible virus, but a conscious choice claiming more than 1.3 million lives yearly in India. For decades, we have battled this addiction with counseling, nicotine replacement therapies, and sheer willpower. While these remain crucial weapons, there is a revolution brewing. We are witnessing a paradigm shift in how we tackle tobacco's hold. Research suggests that harm reduction products could be more effective than traditional nicotine replacement therapies, but caution is warranted as we await long term results of the research done in this field. By embracing novel strategies and merging the wisdom of the old with innovations of tomorrow, we can envision a day when smoke free air is not a dream. This roundtable brings together experts from different fields, medical practitioners, public health experts, and lawyers who will look into the intricacies of harm reduction. I'll leave the field to them and get to my job of welcoming our esteemed guests here. I have immense pleasure to welcome our chief guest, Dr. S. Senthil Kumar. He's a Lok Sabha MP from Dharmapuri, Tamil Nadu. He's also a member of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Health. He completed his MBBS from Annamalai University and went on to do his MD from Sri Ramachandra Medical College and Research Institute. He's the right person to guide this audience in more ways than one. Welcome to the roundtable, sir. It's indeed an honor to have you here. Our keynote speaker, Sri Lalit Bhasin, is a distinguished lawyer with over 5 decades of law practice. 6 decades, sorry, sir. He's the managing partner of Bhasin and Co. And he has extensively, he's an authority on the subject, you can say. He has extensively spoken and written on this subject. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you here, sir. Once again, a heartfelt welcome to all of you. May this roundtable be a catalyst for change and ultimately a beacon of hope in the fight for a healthier and smoke-free India. I would also like to introduce our moderator for today. She's been held up, a little late today. So our moderator for the day is Lottie Alaric. She'll be here soon. And she's a noted television anchor, actor, and theatre personality. So with that, I'll invite Dr. Senthil Kumar to make his inaugural address.
A very warm good morning to everybody present here. I'm glad to be among you, inaugurating this roundtable discussion on a pragmatic approach to tobacco harm reduction. We are at crossroads of tradition and innovation in our battle against tobacco addiction. A public health crisis that, despite our best efforts, continues to claim more than 1.3 million lives in India every year. The challenge posed by the tobacco epidemic represents a crisis of choice, and yet it is one we have strangled to overcome. The path to reducing the global burden of tobacco use is fraught with complexity, requiring a nuanced approach that balances caution with the imperative of progress. The topic of this roundtable underscores a critical evolution in our understanding of tobacco addiction and its management. We are reminded that smoking cessation has transcended its historical confines, emerging as a multidisciplinary field buoyed by advances in science, technology, and clinical psychology. The fading stigma associated with tobacco addiction makes a significant shift in societal attitudes, one that represents both opportunities and challenges. India has a unique tobacco addiction challenge with nearly 30% of our population using tobacco in various forms. This underscores the urgency of embracing innovative strategies of harm reduction, while traditional methods, counseling, nicotine replacement therapies, and behavioral interventions remain foundational. The emergence of novel nicotine delivery systems and digital health technologies offers promising new pathways to cessation. Yet, as we navigate the tobacco addiction challenge, we must proceed with caution. The debate around e cigarettes and vaping, for example, highlights the need for a measured approach, while studies suggest that relatively lower harm and the potential as cessation aids, the long term effects are still uncertain. Our commitment to public health demands that we closely monitor these developments, ensuring that our policies are informed by robust evidence and a commitment to safety. I had opposed the ENDS Ban Act when Parliament debated the legislation. I did so because the blanket ban on e cigarettes and the like products was not based on any scientific evidence. I opposed the targeting of one type of cigarette as all of them are hazardous to health. The advent of telemedicine, smartphone applications, and artificial intelligence in smoking cessation strategies represent a frontier of untapped potential. These technologies offer personalized support and interventions, promising to revolutionize our approach to tobacco harm reduction. However, as we embrace these innovations, we must also remain vigilant, ensuring that the complement rather than replace the proven strategies that have served as the bedrock of our efforts to date. As we proceed with today's roundtable, let us be guided by a spirit of cautious optimism. Our goal is not merely to reduce the harm associated with tobacco use, but to envision and realize a future where tobacco addiction is a thing of the past. This roundtable represents a step forward in that journey, a forum of the exchange of ideas, the challenging of assumptions, and the forging of a consensus on the way forward. I expect you all to engage fully in the discussion that follows. Let us draw upon the wealth of knowledge and experience represented here to chart a course towards a healthier, smoke free future. Together, we can bridge the gap between prohibition and progress, leveraging the best of traditional wisdom and cutting edge innovation to clear the air for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Senthil Kumar. I would now like to invite Mr. Lalit Bhasin to make his points.
I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm a Dr. Lalit Bhasin. So just a correction so that you can make the correction in the profile. I bring to you greetings from the Society of Indian Law Firms, of which I happen to be the president, as also the Bar Association of India as its immediate past president. So I'm here as a speaker, and I'm a non-smoker, and I'm a teetotaler. But that doesn't mean, you see, that I can't speak on tobacco, its use and abuse, not only in India, but at the international level. I had the occasion to examine the constitutionality and legal validity of the law passed by the parliament banning the e-cigarettes and other connected items. There is a total prohibition. You can't manufacture, much less sell and all that. On the last occasion, I think when I participated, I had highlighted the constitutional provisions, and I would like to recapitulate for the benefit of those who were not present in the last hearing, particularly our students also who are here. So the Constitution of India has a chapter which is called the Directive Principles. I think most of us are aware what are the directive principles of the state policy. That means it is enjoined upon the state, that is the government, to introduce certain measures which would help the country and the citizens in various aspects, you see, including healthcare. And I invite your attention to Article 47, duty of the state to raise the level of nutrition and the standard of living and to improve public health. This is the title. The state shall regard the raising of level of nutrition and the standard of living of its people and the improvement of public health as among its primary duties, and in particular, and this is important, and in particular the state shall endeavor to bring about prohibition of consumption except for medicinal purposes of intoxicating drinks and of drugs which are injurious to health. So this is the directive principle regarding public health, and there is a significant omission with regard to use of tobacco. On the other hand, there is a specific directive to the state that it would ensure that there should be prohibition of intoxicating drinks. So this distinction between the intoxicating drinks, that is the liquor part, and tobacco is very significant. Tobacco is not mentioned anywhere. Now I invite you to the Schedule 7 of the Constitution, which sets out which are the areas in which the Union of India can bring the laws. That is list 1. Second list is where the states of the country can bring the laws. Third is the concurrent list, in which both the union and state, subject to the provisions of the Constitution, can bring about certain laws. Now, in the union list, item 84, duties of excise on tobacco and other goods manufactured or produced in India, except alcoholic liquors for human consumption, opium, Indian hemp, and other narcotic drugs and narcotics. So, this sanctions the manufacture and dealing in tobacco because it authorizes the government of India, the union, to levy duties of excise on tobacco. So there is a sanction that tobacco is a legitimate activity. We are not talking about the health concern for the time being, that the experts will talk about. We are on the constitutionality of this, you see. Therefore, tobacco on other goods manufactured or produced in India. Therefore, manufacturing of tobacco products is a legitimate legal activity as sanctioned by our constitution. And therefore, there can be no question about a total prohibition. That is one ground on which, you see, I had written about also that the law which is framed, which is made out by the parliament, banning, you see, the e-cigarettes and all that, that was unconstitutional, and I reiterate the same. Now, if you turn to the state list, that is the list 2, item 8, intoxicating liquors, that is to say the production, manufacture, possession, transport, purchase, and all that. On this, the state can make the laws. So there is no mention about tobacco. Again, what we call legally casus omissus, that it is intentional omission from the list, a very conscious omission. And in the concurrent list, the duties, again the state list, duties of excise on the following goods manufactured or produced in the state, and countervailing duties at the same time manufactured, and that says alcoholic liquors and all that, does not mention tobacco anywhere in the state list. The concurrent list says, item 33, trade and commerce in and production, supply and distribution of the products of any industry where the control of such industry by the union is declared by parliament by law to be expedient in the public interest, and imported goods of the same kind as such products. Now, this was invoked by the parliament while framing that law regarding e-cigarettes and all that. This was invoked, but this invocation of this particular clause is itself illegal because the manufacture and dealing with tobacco is already sanctioned specifically in the earlier provisions of this of our constitution. Therefore, that step is also illegal. Accordingly, there can be no question of a total prohibition legally. And we have seen in the case of liquor, wherever there has been total prohibition, particularly in the state of Tamil Nadu or in the state of Bihar and so many other states, was there in practice a total prohibition? No, it led to illicit manufacture, it led to illegal imports of liquor and all sorts of illegal activities, and the prohibition was a total failure, even with regard to liquor. Now, is tobacco the only cause of cancer? I ask myself. As I said, I don't smoke, but my father, he was a regular smoker. I don't say chain smoker, but regular smoker. My brother is a smoker. But they did not, my father did not die of cancer. He died of heart attack. My wife, late wife, she died in 1991 because of lung cancer. But she was not a smoker. And she was not even a captive smoker because I don't smoke. So it is not that it is only tobacco which can cause cancer, or people who smoke, they will die of cancer. Everything has to be like regulated in a reasonable manner. Consumption of liquor can lead to cirrhosis. So many people die, you see, of excessive use of liquor. Therefore, there has to be like a self-regulation. So far, use of such, say liquor or even narcotics. Narcotics are not totally banned, but their use is regulated because they are used for medicinal purposes also. Therefore, there has to be a proper regulation. And what is the result that we are having, you see, today with regard to use of tobacco? I'll just share, you see, some details with you that India is the second largest producer of tobacco in the world, providing livelihood to 45.7 million people in the country. Now, when we talk of health hazards, we have to be conscious of the fact about what we call development, employment, growth of industry. For instance, recently the Supreme Court, in a very major judgment, said that yes, environment is very important. Sustainable development is very significant. It has to be there. But sustainable development cannot be at the expense of growth of business and industry. Therefore, they upset the decision of the National Green Tribunal, which had prohibited and banned, you see, certain felling of trees because the industry could not be set up in that region. Therefore, when we talk of prohibition and such drastic steps, we have to be conscious of its other consequences on the economy of the country, on the employment of the country. This will lead to starvation if there is a total prohibition of millions of workers who are employed in the plantations and in the manufacture of the cigarettes. And we have in India extreme regulations already in place. I watch the television quite regularly, and whenever some ad comes about tobacco, cigarettes, those, I just shut my eyes because I can't see that. And those are the same things which are reproduced on the cigarette packages. About 85% of the package depicts in a very, very horrible manner what could be the consequences of cancer. But do people really watch that? No. People shut their eyes, they don't look at it. And that has led to use of cigarettes which are illegally imported into India and which do not have, you see, those pictures on the front. Therefore, a part of pictorial warning in India, a preference of smuggled cigarettes without the prescribed warning. Illicit cigarettes remain a huge challenge with current volume equivalent to 1/3 of the illegal volume, and this has a grave impact on the economy of the country also. With legal cigarettes already unaffordable to a sizable portion of the population, tax increases on cigarettes have the potential to facilitate further shift from legal to illicit cigarettes. Illicit cigarettes, a big, big market here. And then India has huge potential for tobacco exports. So these are relevant considerations for the economic progress of the country. You have to balance the two things. No one says that tobacco use should be unregulated. It should be regulated, but there cannot be any question about a prohibition because that is sanctioned by our constitution. So these are my views, and I leave it to the experts to touch upon, you see, the health part, those dealing with the medical problems. As I said, cancer is not caused only because of use of cigarettes. Cancer can have other, you see, um, implications also. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhasin, for that enlightened talk on the use as well as the regulation of tobacco and related products. So I think the basic takeaway here is that, it's not only unconstitutional as guaranteed by the Constitution, the sale and use of tobacco and related products, but also it has an economic and a health consequence to it. So it's about high time that we examine these rules and come up with alternatives and give people the choice of selecting products for themselves. So thank you, sir. And with that, I'll hand over to Lottie. I've already introduced her before, and we'll move on to the next session.
Yeah, can you hear me now? So apologies, as there were congestions at so many places and all that. So, but I know that's no excuse, but I'd still ask for your apologies. So, yeah, without further ado, let's just start with our first session on policy perspectives on THR. And the panelists for these are Ms. Meenakshi Sarma Dabas, Partner Corporate Law Group, Dr. Joe Thomas, Head School of Global Health, Melbourne, Australia, Dr. Nimesh Desai, former Director IBAS, and Ms. Nusrat Parveen Khan, Faculty of Law, Jamia Millia Islamia. So our first speaker will be Ms. Meenakshi Sarma Dabas. A few words about her. She's a partner at New Delhi-based law firm Corporate Law Group. She heads the food and nutrition practice and is also an integral part of the pharmaceuticals cosmetic practice group. She's currently advising several national, multinational, and international NGOs in their day-to-day legal and regulatory matters under the various acts for food safety standards and engaging with related Government of India regulatory authorities, department, and ministries. She's enrolled as an attorney with the Bar Council of Delhi. So over to you, Ms. Meenakshi.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And also, the context that was already said before by the panelists, Mr. Dr. Bashir, as well as Mr. Senthil Kumar, I think that makes my job easier. But yeah, I will be talking about primarily, how tobacco is regulated in India and how tobacco harm reduction products right now are, taken into consideration or how they ought to be regulated. So, presentation that I'll be sharing with you. Of course, the presentation is a bit busy, but I'll not go into too much of detail. But I really wanted it to be there in the presentation so that the material is out there, which is very important. So I won't touch much upon the tobacco epidemic or the fact sheet of tobacco. We all know, that India is the second largest consumer and producer of tobacco. Mr. Lalit Bhasinat already touched about it. What are the health implications, the risk implications, and also, different committees of health looking into it, the economic burden, the social burden. So there are social and health experts here, which who will be dealing in that. So firstly, when we talk about tobacco regulation in India, it started off with our India being ratifying the WHO FCTC, and uh, finally after that we passed our Cigarette and Other Tobacco Products Act, that is the COPTA. And before that, it was the Cigarettes Act itself. But after COTPA came into implementation, it not only regulated just cigarettes, but it's also brought all forms of tobacco under its legislative control. So both smoked and non-smoked tobacco products were now regulated by COTPA. And COTPA, as it is very legit. It actually regulates the consumption, production, supply, distribution of all these products, imposes restrictions on advertising, promotion, sponsorship. It also prohibits smoking in certain places, prohibits the sale to minors, and it insists on putting up mandatory depiction of specified pictorial health warnings, etc. But it doesn't ban tobacco per se. It actually regulates tobacco, which is most important here. So what are the different tobacco products that are regulated under this legislation? So we have the schedule under COTPA, and there are 10 products which are regulated. So cigarettes, cigars, cerutes, bidis, cigarette tobacco, pipe tobacco, hookah tobacco, chewing tobacco, snuff, pan masala, or any chewing material having tobacco as one of the ingredients, gutka, tooth powder also containing tobacco. So all these products are not banned. These are regulated. And out of this, if you see, there are 7 products which are actually combustible products, tobacco products, which are most harmful because from whatever, at least scientific material I have, come across, it is the combustion and the production of those, harmful chemicals that are produced actually leads to the most adverse health implications. So these are the products which are actually regulated under this act, and extreme measures of control are laid down, as I had already stated. For example, advertising restrictions, health pictorial depictions, and different restrictions on sale, etc. So now, as we look into the FCTC and the tobacco regulation. Why we are touching here on the tobacco regulation so specifically? Because we want to see whether this particular regulation, if it regulates the harm reduction products, would it be enough, or do you really need to ban them? So you see under WHO Article 8, what it says, it talks about the protection of people from exposure to tobacco products, smoke particularly. Even under COTPA Section 4, it is, it it regulates that, and there are specific rules which had come into force in 2008, which through these regulations, they actually, protect people from the exposure of smoke. And there have been like designated smoking areas are put up in hotels or restaurants and airports, etc., where you can smoke. Otherwise, smoking in public places are banned. So you have this already in place, this feature. Can I have the slide? Second is Article 14 of the WHO FCTC, which talks about tobacco cessation. So here, under the regulations, under COTPA and also the other, regulations, they don't particularly talk about cessation, but then the National Tobacco Control Program is in place. And we all know, without going into details, it is now implementable in all the 36 states and union territories, covering over 600 districts, and they are looking at cessation therapies. They are looking at NRT therapies, but how effective are they? Whether they are enough, that has to be, examined, and that is what even the legislators need to look into. Then we come to, Article 16 of the WHO FCTC. They talk about sale to minors. So even that is addressed by COTPA. So Section 6 of COTPA looks into that. It prohibits the sale of cigarettes and other tobacco products to anybody under the age of 18. And they also, even the points of sale, for example, within a certain area from school educational institutions, you are banned from selling such items. So that is again taken care by COTPA. Similarly, taxation policies, while there is a bit of laxity in the Indian taxation policies as far as WHO is concerned, because what WHO recommends is around at least 75% of taxation on the retail price of all tobacco products. That is under Article 6. However, India, under the Indian Finance Act, they deal with taxation issues. And when we look at the taxation structure for tobacco, I'm not a taxation expert, but what I have looked into, GST, of course, you are under the highest slab, which is 28% slab, because it is a sin product. So you have 28% tax, and in the Union Budget 2023-24, again, the finance minister had actually increased the excise duty on tobacco and putting the national calamity contingent duty. Plus, you have the compensation cess. So all of that, leads to a great, taxation incidence. However, it is still lesser than what has been prescribed by WHO. So it comes to around 52.5%, but it is much lesser than 75%. So government should look at how you would maybe, look at taxing the tobacco goods further rather than banning them altogether. Then content of tobacco products. Again, similarly, where Articles 9 and 10 of WHO FCTC talks about regulation of contents of emissions of tobacco products, and specific measures have to be there for testing and regulating these contents and emissions. Similarly, under Section 7 and 11 of COTPA, they talk about the regulation of contents and emissions of tobacco products, especially the disclosure of nicotine and tar contents. So you have that in place, and you actually, under Section 11, there are designated laboratories across India which tests those levels. Public awareness, again, Section 12 of Article 12 of WHO FTCC. However, in COTPA, there is no particular provision to mention that. However, when we talk about the National Tobacco Control Program, they actually carry out the public awareness perspective. They lead the mass media campaigns aiming to inform the public about the harmful effects of tobacco, both smoke and smokeless. Advertising and promotions, of course, as guided by the WHO FCTC under Article 13, Section 5 of COTPA, uh, restricts any kind of direct and indirect advertising, promotion, and sponsorship of cigarettes and tobacco products. Then packaging and labeling, similarly, WHO Article 11 and under Section 7 of COTPA. So you have these pictorial depictions, which Mr. Lalit Bhasin had already talked about, and you need to have, at least 40% of the principal display panel in the front of the package, that depiction about, that it is injurious to health. And in fact, recently there was some amendment which also says that it may lead to death. So you have the pictorial depiction out there as well on the products. Then comes harm reduction. Now, harm reduction, WHO FCTC particularly talks about it under Article 21, that in addition to the demand and supply strategies, harm reduction should be the third pillar of, the strategies that the nations should adopt. However, India is yet to look into that. And in fact, rather than looking at the science, looking at the evidence which different countries across the globe is doing currently, they have passed a blanket ban under the ENDS Act, which is the Prohibition of Electronic Cigarettes ban. So it is a plethora of products have been banned. ENDS, of course, heat-not-burn products and like devices. So when we look at the the ENDS ban, what does it how does it look into e-cigarettes? It says that electronic cigarette means an electronic device that heats a substance with or without nicotine and flavors to create an aerosol for inhalation, and includes all forms of ENDS, heat-not-burn, e-hookah, and light devices by whatever name it can be called, shape, size, or form, and it may but doesn't include any product licensed by the under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, because under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, there are certain nicotine products which are prescribed as NRTs. So other than that, all these products have been banned. But is it a legitimate ban? That is the main question. As the former speaker, Mr. Bhasin, had already talked about, nicotine and tobacco is a legitimate, a trade practice in India, but you have, segregated certain tobacco products from the gamut of products which you are already regulating and banning them. Now, when we are talking about this ban, it was actually, how did it start? It, of course, it was under discussions, parliamentary committees had been looking into it, but it was in 2019 that ICMR had come up with a white paper on e-cigarettes, and they really talked about the increasing popularity of these products amongst youth and what are the public health risks that have been posed. But one product, which is the heat-not-burn or the heated tobacco products, which are also a kind of tobacco products, those were not dealt in that white paper. And in different, in fact, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare also in Parliament considered that scientific studies were not taken into consideration. I think later my colleague Navneet will be talking more on the policies and how the Parliament dealt with it. So key parliamentaries actually they raised the issue about the blanket ban on e-cigarettes and as well as HNBs, and it was like brushed aside. So no scientific evidence was looked into as far as HNB products were concerned. So the question arises, why don't you just add heat-not-burn products, which are actually tobacco products, as item number 11 under that schedule, which I had already shown you under COTPA. So that would be the right way to do it. You would actually regulate it. You already have all the provisions that we have come across earlier, where you advertising restrictions, claim restrictions, all of that, sale restrictions. You already have that in place. So just put this product under that list, and you control these as well. And especially because HTPs again are not, e-cigarettes also, because e-cigarettes contain nicotine liquid solution. But as far as HTPs are concerned, they are, they actually have these cigarette sticks, which are formed from processed tobacco. So the combustion is not there, but tobacco is there, but yet you have the nicotine inhalation, but there is no synthetic nicotine, and there is no smoke, there is no ash, there is no burning. It is just the heating. And similarly, it is not a light device. For example, I'll take a very offhanded example. You have an automatic washing machine and you have a manual washing machine. Do you actually ban an automatic washing machine saying that, it is electronic? I mean, or it uses a particular technology. So that should not be the criteria. It should be what is the core substance. So if this heated tobacco stick is heated by a electronic, mechanism, that should not be the reason for its, banning. The core substance should be. So because e-cigarettes are also in the same category of, at least operational operation, they have simply clubbed them together without this particular distinction. And this distinction has been very well, brought out by the World's Custom Organization. That was in 2022, particularly for taxation, and Indian Finance Bill 2021 also takes note of that. Similarly, WHO distinguishes HTPs from e-cigarettes. They particularly talk about it in the HTP information sheet. They say that HTPs should not be confused with e-cigarettes ends. And they also say in a report, which is very recent, 2023, and would be maybe taken up in the upcoming COP discussions, where they say that, they recommend actually that regulating HTPs akin to conventional cigarettes, smoked tobacco products, or any other tobacco product category where a higher level of health protection is achieved or where this is not possible under existing legislative definitions, parties should consider amending their laws to ensure HTPs are regulated akin to conventional cigarettes. So here we are talking about these tobacco products being regulated akin to cigarettes. So you basically regulate them like other tobacco products under COTPA and don't ban them under the Electronic Ban Act. And of course, you have the global best practices where countries of, I think around 75 countries have actually come up with regulations. And they have, of course, going into the science, going into the evidence, and they have come up with specific country laws. And it gives actually the smokers an alternative to switch to these less risk. I will not say that these are like totally risk free, but less risk or less harm products. And it is a known fact globally that at least in the continuum of harm products, the combustible products are the most harmful, and the non-combustible are not. So the diagram shows that. However, in India, you are allowing the legitimate sale of all these combustible products under the COTPA. However, you are actually banning a product which is less harmful. And again, WHO recommends regulating these new tobacco-related products to maximize the benefits and minimize the harms. I will not go into the details, but it's they have specifically come up with that in a report, 2018 report. These are global best practices. I'll not go into details, but countries like UK, America, US, this I will specifically touch upon because they had given a categorical, they had looked into the evidence, the science, and they have actually given an authorization to heat not burn products and called them modified risk products, less modified risk products. So, basically a pre-approval pathway was taken here, which India should look into. Then we have Sweden, we have New Zealand. Again, it was, they have moved from banning to regulating. Italy, Canada, Japan. In fact, the incidence of now smoking has come down a lot after these alternatives have been allowed in Japan. Russia, Philippines. So I think, the takeaway is that because it is a tobacco product, it is a less harmful tobacco product, regulate it, come up with product-specific legislations, but not ban it per se. So that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Meenakshi, for giving us a detailed account on tobacco regulation and particularly talking about the global context as to what the WCO says and what the WHO says and what are the global best practices. I think there's a lot to be taken home from here. where the next speaker we have today is Dr. Joe Thomas. Dr. Joe Thomas is Professor of Public Health, Institute of Health and Management, Victoria, Australia. He's a public policy expert with over 2 decades of experience in senior management and leadership positions with intergovernmental organizations, leading academic centers and civil society institutions. His extensive international experience includes translating global goals and multilateral instruments into active political initiatives. He's a highly skilled professional in complex program management and an exceptionally gifted advisor to ministers, diplomats, and senior officials. So over to you, Dr. Joe.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for that generous introduction. And today I'll be talking about harm reduction from a public health perspective. In fact, the idea of harm reduction came from public health. So, and also very specifically in the context of the rapid spread of HIV infection and drug use related HIV infection. This is one of the disease impetus for looking at the efficacy of harm reduction. So, and also there are certain historical fact behind how harm reduction evolved. If you look at the issue of alcohol control, about 100 years ago, the complete prohibition was implemented in the United States. Now it's exactly 100 years this year. So there are photos of historical photos. We can see complete destruction of alcohol, huge vats, huge tract of alcohol pools are created. So there's a history of how drugs, how alcohol, how mind-altering substance are regulated and controlled. So that's one of the facts you have to remember. So when we look at harm reduction, the idea of harm reduction is a set of policies, set of programs, and also a set of actual pragmatic ideas. How do you regulate substance use? The emphasis is not on complete prevention. It's about regulating, and also it's about reducing the risk related with the use of drugs. And also you are looking at what are the legal implications and how laws are created. And when you look at harm reduction, quite often it's at the gray areas of legal implementation. And also, just for introduction, I wanted to share my experience of running harm reduction programs. I worked in Manipur, Churachandpur district for 2 years, implementing a harm reduction program. That's one of the first harm reduction projects in the country, looking at the efficacy of behavioral modification for reducing HIV infection among the injection drug users. So the idea is not completely banning the drug use. It's not about completely looking at the legal aspects of drug use, but whereas reducing the harm related drug use. And our program was to distribute syringe and needle and related paraphernalia to the drug users. And probably that is the first time a legal, semi-legal, or we use the boundaries of legal issues about drug prevention, drug use to test this efficacy, because it's a WHO and ICMR joint project. We had certain legitimacy to implement a project. And this project is about distributing syringe, needle, clean syringe, needle, and distilled water along with bleach. So this is a package is distributed to the drug users. Only one condition that they have to come to the ICMR center to collect it. They can get it free. No questions asked. So we may ask, would you like to go for a consultation, counseling, or would you like to be referred to a treatment center? This is a very basic questions are asked, and without no other question, it is distributed. Then we look at the efficacy, how it is contributed towards reduction in HIV-related, the explosion. The HIV infection on the injection drug users was one of the highest in the country, was in Manipur. and particularly targeted towards, particularly experienced by 2 or 3 ethnic communities. But that ethnographic dimension of HIV infection is not highlighted in the national debate, national discourse. Now we think that HIV infection is under control and talking about the history of a public health response towards HIV using harm reduction strategies. And this is how we created evidence for and advocating for a policy for harm reduction. And my end of my presentation, I'll also narrate some of the stories of the negative aspects of harm reduction, because that's important to learn that how we learn lessons from harm reduction strategies when you talk about implementing harm reduction in other contexts. And again, why do you remember that harm reduction is a set of practical strategies. And these practical strategies are evolving strategies based on experience and based on the implementation strategies. And if I switch my experience from Manipur to in Australia, in the Northern Territory, a city called Darwin, I was a regional manager for Northern Territory AIDS and Hepatitis Council. And there, no questions asked, they can come to the clinic and they can just collect injection drug paraphernalia. And also there is a space, what we call it as safe injecting space. They can come, bring their material, they can inject it under supervision, quote unquote, of professionals. So this other extreme of that. That's I managed another 2 years. So that I've seen the legal issues of her. And if you travel to Europe, very discreetly, some places you can see some unmarked vehicles are parked and people walk in and you can walk out, particularly when you travel to Geneva, just outside the Corneva train station. That's one of the main stations. There is 2 major trucks of stationery. And uninitiated visitor, you don't see anything in particular about it. You walk in, you can even get the pure heroin from to get injection. And also you can get methadone if you want to sustain it. There are some other alternative material for substance use you can get in. So why I narrated these stories is to show the complexity and the complexity in which how this is implemented in different contexts. And the modalities of the implementation is getting refined and it is legalized, legal quote unquote. When I say legalized means the legal aspects of harm reduction is also evolving. So this is another point you have to remember that. And when you look at harm reduction as a philosophy, it refers to a range of practices reducing policies, reducing the harm, not necessarily to stop the use. So this is also important thing. And this is the emphasis on the human behavior and whether we can modify a little bit to reduce the harm. So this is a major aspect of the harm reduction. And this creates ethical and moral dilemmas. So this is one of the major, the reason for why this debates like this is being conducted, to explore what are the moral issues, what are the ethical issues which should be addressed to implement it. Because this is also part of the legal provision, how law is evolving. And I understand that the idea of harm reduction from public health is more to many other aspects. So for example, tobacco control is just being discussed. And also in the food industry, it is being discussed, greatly discussed. And even the sports industry now, we are talking about harm reduction for some of the what you call the contact sports, to what extent we can allow certain, the close contact, the punch, how strong or less strong, those kind of discussion. So what I'm saying is that the concept of harm reduction is spread out into various dimensions of human life. And again, the principle behind harm reduction is acceptance of the fact that some drug users cannot be, you cannot expect them to stop their drug use in the present condition. So this is the one of the revelation or understanding that drug use is not going to be completely eliminated. Then how do you deal with it? So this is the basic principle behind it. And also, again, let me emphasize that the focus is on preventing the harm rather than preventing the use itself. This also got another issue. I mean, we quite often we hear about a slogan called war on drugs. And the war on drugs, what you're noticing is that invariably it is war on drug users. So any country, if you look at it, whichever country when you use the word war on drugs, the war is on drug users. Again, let me just use this minute, 1 second, to highlight some of the word they use to explain certain issues. We use the word war, we use the word combating, and we also defending. So sometimes when you look at the language you use is militaristic language. From the public health, militaristic language is not we encourage to describe public health challenges and also public health opportunities. This is very important, the language when you use the drug use. War on drugs is invariably war on drug users. Drug users are the lowest link of the entire industry of drugs, drug use, drug smuggling, drug industry. But they are not the main kingpin who are making money out of it. The drug users, when you look at, they are the lowest, weakest link of the entire social phenomenon. And the language is in that context become very important. Any language militaristic, when we invoke the ideas of militaristic ideas to look at public health, it invariably backfires. So those who are looking at harm reduction, keep this in mind. Your language you use to describe substance use, drug use, even the tobacco use, this is not a militaristic context, a militaristic jargon you have to invoke to look at it. And this is another message when you look at harm reduction. We should be careful about the language use, even our day-to-day use when you describe about tobacco use and also drug use. Again, I emphasize this issue much more clearly. The moment we invoke the imagery from militaristic imagery, that invariably lead towards focusing on the drug users or the users of whatever subject we are trying to modify. And again, when you look at harm reduction, we aim to reduce the negative consequences. And if I may list some of the activities, one is a syringe access, syringe exchange from the drug use I mentioned, and also the distribution of naloxone, that is a medicine used for the overdose. In the United States, one of the major reasons for mortality related to the drug use is overdose. In India also, overdose is one of the major reasons for why drug users the substance adulteration is reduced. The one who uses the last end, they may think that they're using the regular one, the adulterated one, but they get very pure form of drugs without adulteration. That leads towards overdose. So overdose reduction is a harm reduction. This also, if you look at apply in the tobacco use, this has got implication. So naloxone is a substance which is distributed. If an overdose comes, they can give an injection immediately. So that is one of the standard overdose reduction in many part of the world. But India, the use of naloxone is very controlled. It's a medically controlled substance. So publicly, it is not available that way. And the third is at supervised consumption sites. Means I mentioned about, sorry. Some of the European countries, this supervised consumption sites are very popular. But India, supervised substance use centers are not existing. I mean, it's not allowed, it's not experimented at all. And the third is about safe supply of drugs, injection drug use needle, and also disposal of used needle. That's also another issue. It's related to harm reduction. In India, you can see that the used drugs and the needle and syringe is just thrown out. It may be just deposited in the general garbage. It's not deposited separately. In some other countries, you can see safe disposable boxes. In washrooms, you can see yellow boxes, which is very discreet, but it is to deposit your used syringe and needle. So disposal of the used equipment is also part of the harm reduction. And again, when I mentioned that needle exchange program, which with Manipur, we experimented it. That's the first time the government of India, ICMR, and also Ministry of Health explored the possibility of allowing drug use. I mean, so allowing the use of syringe and needle exchange. Now in India, that program is running legally under the name called targeted intervention. They don't call it as needle and syringe exchange. It's called a targeted intervention under the National AIDS Control Organization. There is about, I think my understanding, the number may not be exactly correct, almost 160 districts there are syringe and needle exchange programs. But in the Indian context, we have noticed that how they modified that innovation, how you distribute syringe and needle. And I'm not naming the place. I've visited many other substance use harm reduction in Indian context. In one district in the beach side, there are places you can see clean syringe and needle packets, and they pack it and they keep it in some strategic location. And these are the places where the drug users come and congregate to inject. So, but in other countries, it is they have to come to the center and collect it. But the drug users' access to institutions are very, very limited, because the institutions are actually, the Indian context represent the power structure. And also most of the drug users are, in essence, they are alienated, they're marginalized from the society. So any idea of encounter with an institution is frightening for them. So the Indian context, we deinstitutionalize the distribution of harm reduction activities. And this is mostly done by the peer outreach workers. These are the drug users, or they're ex-drug users, or some others still using it. Under supervision of the social service or social workers, they distribute needle, they distribute syringe and needle, the equipments. So this is, and also sometimes in some places we have seen that a needle is, a metal spoon is also given. The metal spoon is given to heat the drugs. The number for heroin, they take the water and they heat it for injecting it before the injection. So there are different practices is happening across the country. In India, some people, they inject on the veins, they inject on your neck, wherever they can see it. So the practice also varies. So the harm reduction strategy to link up them with the medical facility is one of the harm reduction strategies. And there are a lot of criticism. I mentioned about ethical and moral dilemmas about harm reduction. And one of the major criticism about harm reduction strategies are it is enabling harmful behavior. So this is one of the major challenge, ethical and behavioral challenge. You're enabling them. You're contributing towards drug use, and also you're not addressing the core issues. This is one of the major criticism. And second, they're talking about justice and fairness. This is one of the, again, in the context of developing countries, is it fair? Is it just to spend money on buying drugs, buying needle and syringe, and give it to a drug user? And don't you think you should use this money for maybe for other chronic disease and spend money on other prevention of the diseases rather than investing on the drug users? So this is a major a justice and fairness issue about promoting harm reduction, whether we should invest public money for promoting unsafe behavior of certain individuals. So these moral issues keep on taking place in many parts of the world and in India also. And also the second issue is about, the next issue is about individual right versus community rights. So where do you emphasize? If you emphasize the right of an individual to continue his harmful behavior, or a society's right to have a safety from that. So this issue again is still an ongoing dialogue. And also we look at the issue of effectiveness and evidence. What evidence we have to look at and to promote harm reduction strategies. And I mentioned that one of the first harm reduction legal project was I was managing it as from the ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research. So that's the first, the technical project we run to look at the efficacy. And as a person who managed it, I can see the plus and minus point of view. In public health, there is a very, I would say, a secret about public health is that when you report the data, quite often you report the success stories. You don't report the negative side of it. Most of the clinical research, I'm sorry, let me very mildly put it that way. The clinical research, I'm a editor-in-chief of one of the leading public health journal, Critical Public Health and Cogent Public Health. Normally, we publish the success stories. I mean, the last year I approved about 400 papers. None of the papers are the negative stories. No paper. What failed when you implemented the clinical research? What happened? What failure? Unfortunately, the failure is more important data and evidence to look at the policy framework, but that is never shared. This is one of the ethical challenges of research in the medical field. This has got implication in the harm reduction strategy as well. Let me narrate my story of the data management about negative side. This data, I was not allowed, I'm not saying I'm not allowed. I didn't attempt to publish this paper. So maybe that's the best way to do that. See, the package we distributed was syringe, needle, distilled water, and bleach. So this is what we distributed. Why bleach? If they have a syringe and needle, they wanted to reuse it, use the bleach to clean it. And the pictorial material we distribute along with that, it shows how do you clean your syringe, three times in, 3 times out, using the bleach. And also we give the clean distilled water to mix your drugs, because what happened is that they used to mix the drugs with polluted water, and that led towards vein collapse, vein abscess. So to reduce that vein abscess, we give clean water and the bleach. But interestingly, both the same color. And when they get high, many of the instead of distilled water, they use the bleach to inject it. It's a clinically, this protocol was approved by probably 10 layers and ethics review committees, and ICMR ethics review committee, WHO ethics review committee. And I was a fresh fellow and I was a senior research officer. I didn't know, I was implementing a project which is approved by all the layers of that. But I started seeing, I had three senior research officers, the research fellows who are the medical doctors, fresh MBBS graduates. They started seeing the vein collapse. And we didn't know how to deal with it, and we reported that. Then we didn't look at it. We started seeing high incidence of drug users reporting with the collapsed vein. The reason is that they injected the number for heroin with bleach and injected it. And I'm just giving an example about when you implement harm reduction, some of the unexpected consequences of that. And why I'm highlighting is that whenever we look at harm reduction strategies, our efficacy of the data is not that precise. Maybe we focus more on the plus point success stories. And the efficacy of this injection drug use, needle exchange is extensively published in paper, but not the negative part of it. And we didn't even discuss publicly. Very few areas we even shared this data of negative side of not looking at the failure of the project. And I would emphasize, when you look at the harm reduction program, we have to strive towards creating more evidence and data, and also looking at the data and the negative side of what fails to our harm reduction thing. And the final one is about the moral responsibility, and whether the moral responsibility of society is more than its individual's responsibility, and how do you look at individual's moral responsibility towards society, and should we promote that moral responsibility rather than promoting their behavior or facilitating that behavior. So this moral responsibility issue is also one of the major issue of our ongoing dialogue. And also when you look at, there are dilemmas of harm reduction, but at the same time, there are reasonable evidence to have evidence-informed policies to implement harm reduction strategies and various aspects of it. It may be on substance abuse, it may be on food industry, and increasingly on the tobacco industry, sports. There are very many aspects of our human life where behavior need to be modified, reduce personal harm as well as social harm. And this is an evolving subject, it's a complex subject. And our dialogue is on the strategies, methodology, and our way of implementing it, how you capture the data, and ongoing dialogue and debate on the moral and ethical complexities. But at the same time, as a person who practices harm reduction, I manage harm reduction in various contexts in various countries. And one thing is we have ample evidence to say that harm reduction saves lives. So that saving life from that point of view, harm reduction works. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I think that was a really detailed account of all that you told us, and I'm still trying to recover from all the incidents that you've just talked about, and I'm sure many of us here. And also, you spoke of the moral and ethical complexities and the strategies that the countries are trying to implement and trying to get results. And I'm sure today I know what all is being done on a global level. So thank you so much. Well, to take this discussion forward, now we have with us Professor Dr. Nusrat Parveen Khan, and she's the professor and former dean at Faculty of Law, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Professor Khan has also been former dean at School of Law, Bennett University, Greater Noida. She's the member of Advisory Board of India International University of Legal Education and Research, Goa. She has worked on a project for National Commission for Women. She has also authored and edited dozens of books on conflicting and contemporary legal issues. So, ma'am, over to you, please.
Thank you. A very good morning to all of you. First of all, I'll say congratulations to Policy Circle for this event where they've chosen a very important subject. And the subject is having lots of scope for speaking, which is from prohibition to progress, a pragmatic approach to the tobacco reduction. Thank you, Sajna, for inviting me for this event and especially taking up some legal angle. And I'm also thankful that already speakers before me, they were from the legal background. Ms. Meenakshi spoke, Mr. Lalit Bhatin was here, who was talked about constitutional provisions, including the schedule of the Constitution and of some laws. So as the topic is with regard to tobacco control and tobacco harm reduction and the major health hazard and challenges which happens because of the use of the tobacco. The tobacco, we know, is a major public health challenge, and it is among the big population which is consuming tobacco product. That's not only true about our country, that's true about almost most of the countries. However, the percentage may vary from country to country. Keeping that in view, the government have already taken many, initiatives with regard to the tobacco control in the country. Ms. Meenakshi have already in detail, she has talked about the different policies, actions, legislations, including the international scenario. So I'll just start with putting two judgments of one of the Kerala High Court. And though they are old judgment, I'll come to some new judgments also. So one of this judgment, Ramakrishna and another versus State of Kerala, 1999, and Murli Deora versus Union of India, 2001. These are two of the cases whereby the consumers consume tobacco or the product of tobacco. It, of course, harms their body, but simultaneously it's harmful to the public also, the general public's right. The Murli Deora was one of the very important judgments which talked about, to have right to smoke-free environment. And some of the states responded to that legislation should be there with regard to that, or there should be some regulations and policy with regard to the smoking or using of the tobacco product at the public places. And it gave a very clear signal to the government of India, and we have got this COTPA, which Meenakshi already talked about. Since you are the younger students, you can see the name is the Cigarette and Other Tobacco Product, Prohibition of Advertisement and Regulation of Trade and Commerce, Production, Supply and Distribution Act of 2003. So some of the provisions which that act talks about: prohibition of smoking in public places also, and prohibition of advertisement of tobacco product, and prohibition on the sale of tobacco product to the minors especially. So when initially the educational institutions were the places that 100 yards of all the institutional institutions, there will not be any type of display, and there will be specifically mandatory display of pictorial health warning on the tobacco products and on the packages also. It was prohibited in the educational institution and nearby areas. The law also mandates that all tobacco products for their tar and nicotine content, they should be tested for that. And the rules which are pertaining to the provisions were notified during 4 to 6. Some rules came and then they were amended. But there were many challenges for the government to implement the rule, because bringing a law is one thing and implementation is the most important, and to make the particular law, rules and regulation to be effective. So that was a very difficult journey to create, to implement those rules or regulations. And then in the meantime, the government have to revise the smoke-free rules, and which came in 2008, and that put a ban of smoking in public places. However, in Murray Diora, as I told you already, it was, the judgment was in that context. But finally, it took shape of those rules, and that included other places such as, public places include hospitals and all other public areas. Uh, Also, it was already discussed, some zones have been created which can be smoke zones, but generally smoking in public was prohibited. Then another challenge was pertaining to the ban on sale to the minors and sale of tobacco products nearby to the educational institutions. But all of you, I can see here some students, and I have some experiences with the students who are always, in fact, the challenge is basically with regard to how to deal with the youngsters, how to avoid or prohibit it among the youngsters. We are also talking today, apart from this COTPA, we are also talking about the other legislation which came recently and which is a much subject matter of concern. That law, that is, the law is basically a long name. However, it's called as ENDS Act. But here you are the persons, and we should understand why sometimes the government bring, like for example, it says the law name is Prohibition of Electronic Cigarette Production, Manufacture, Import, Export, Transport, Sale, Distribution, Storage, and Advertisement Act 2019. In short, you can say Electronic Cigarette Prohibition Act. But the question is how this ends or electronic cigarettes came into existence, and what are the challenges which were posed by the cigarettes, which have been countered by various countries at different labels with some alternative products. So somehow when we talk of these electronic or e-cigarettes, it may be the passage of time or the development of a country, or we can also say it has been initially introduced to be an alternative of the traditional cigarettes. However, the best way for a person who's into smoking is or into any tobacco product, and they want to improve their health, is to quit their smoking or tobacco habits or the nicotine absolutely or fully. But that does not happen. Sometimes it becomes do or die type of situation. And that time, some of the countries which I'm going on to talk about, United Kingdom and United States of America, they adopted one thing which is called as harm reduction strategy for the smokers. And somehow it was recommended the use of alternative nicotine delivery products, which are including e-cigarettes and other smokeless tobacco products, or any new heated products to the smokers in place of conventional cigarettes. Somehow, I'm not saying these are my views, but somehow replacing a very harmful product, which is little less but is still harmful product. So which are e-cigarettes and etc. So now it's very crucial to understand what all has been covered into this ends and webs, which are the definition which has been given under the Act is quite wide, and I'll not say, or it has not been proven anywhere that they are not risk-free. In fact, it has been clear that they are a little, less harmful to the health than the tobacco, and even they have been used to help the smokers to quit the smoking habits. Also, along with when they are being used to with the stop smoking services. But unfortunately, these products, ends and webs, they are being rapidly mushrooming among the teenagers and the young adults. Then it becomes a matter of concern. Looking at that, an extremely addictive factor, the government of India uh, and somehow the other state government, they have uh, thought of bringing this law, but this law is having a complete ban on all the electronic nicotine delivery system. This is now the issue of concern, a complete ban. Uh, the definition which has been provided under this law is quite wide, and it includes all the electronic devices that heat a substance. And substance means any natural or artificial product, whether it is solid, liquid, or gaseous. The Act have provisions with regard to how it prohibits the manufacturing, import, export, transportation, sale, and distribution of of this product. Advertisement is also directly and indirectly promote the use of electronic. The Act prohibits advertisement, but I think many of the youngsters must be aware that they can order it online, and there are various uh, websites which are available. They can even get on any pan and gutka shop. So and whenever you order anything online, it does not ask about your age. So anybody of any age can. That's one of the flaw of the act. Then compliance of the act, of course, happen with the help of any authorized officers or some type of implementation agency. And the question is, which is actually not happening, because the sale is still there, and even the fines which are on the exporter and importer and manufacturers are not very high fines. And also, they are putting a ban on the manufacture, but they are available. They are available everywhere. They are not very difficult to be, to be procured. So the question is putting a complete ban on this product by this law, which is ENDS law, is giving rise to the illegal sale of the product, and through black market and through online platforms, which is on a constant rise. So once the prohibited product start getting sold through the black market or through the underground channels, it becomes extremely difficult for those few authorities to monitor such channels. And then also bursting of the illegal rackets also demands massive resources and massive drives on the part of the government, which is very heavy on the government exchequer and have not taken place. At least to my knowledge, it has not happened. Rather, since I'm a professor, I'm always among the students, and many of them are very many teenagers when they enter in the university. It is much on rise, and they don't find any difficulty if one of them want to consume it. So it requires very strict compliance. Otherwise, I think all these prohibitions which have been put in the law have been flouted. As I already said, if we look at the experience of some of the countries, especially, I think Ms. Meenakshi have talked about lots of countries, but I'll just take example of United States and United Kingdom, because they are the two countries who allow regulated and taxable sale of such product and ensure that teenagers and youngsters are not adversely affected. And here too, we can just compare this particular law with our traditional law, COTPA, which prohibits cigarette and other tobacco products. So those in that law, the products have been on sale, but with regulations, very strict regulations. Rather, in this case, it has been totally prohibited. because totally prohibition is leading to, as I already said, lots of black market, and it have some type of craze, some type of inquisitiveness among the younger ones. So it's the time for the government to rethink its stance on ends, because instead of putting a complete ban, we require a more pragmatic and strategic move, which can be considered, and that benefit the stakeholders and accomplish a bigger aim of the public health protection. Interestingly, in between, there were many judgments by the Delhi High Court. In fact, one of my own students, Priyansha Gupta, she filed a petition in the Rajasthan High Court towards the implementation of the law, because she, among her peers, used to see we have a law and we are a law student, and we see all our friends into it, and they don't find any. If one want to consume, they don't find any difficulty in procuring it. So she, that young girl, she filed a petition in the Rajasthan High Court for giving some directions with regard to implementation of the act and seizing the products and having some type of search or seizure drives. But till now, nothing has happened. She says even the judges and lawyers said we don't know much about the law. So that's a state of affairs. The court, even in the Delhi High Court, some petitions have been filed. Then
Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We are running out of time.
yeah,
So
yeah.
can
So
you
I'm just
wind up?
finishing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, it's just end. So ultimately, I'll say that taking some lessons from some other countries, we can go for a regulated ban or regulated prohibition of the products, and also save the health of the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nuzhat. I think that was a very interesting discussion, and particularly you talked about the law and where it stands and whether a complete ban would be beneficial or not, and the practicality of the act and all that. So thank you so much. And now may I call upon Dr. Nimesh Desai, former director IBAS, to take this discussion forward and keep to the time limit as well. Now, a few words about Dr. Nimesh Desai. He's the former director of IBAS, and he's been the president of Mano Vikas Charitable Society. He was formerly at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bangalore, and also at AIIMS, Delhi for 10 years. With a number of major awards and publications to his credit, his major areas of work and interest currently are mental health activities in all facets and the application to medicine and public health. So Dr. Nimesh is going to talk about the concerns about the potential for addiction and unintended consequences of THR. Over to you, Dr. Desai.
Thank you. Right. Okay, let me first say, I'm so happy to listen to everyone here, but certainly Joe Thomas, because besides being a psychiatrist, I'm also a trained, passionate, committed public health professional. And so everything that you said rang so true, every syllable that we said. I'm going to try and see if some of those arguments can be carried further. But before that, let's take a look at how our country is. That's what I think this country is about. This too. That's the state of tobacco use. I'm not a huge WHO UN fan. I work with them sometimes, but I'm not a huge WHO UN fan for various reasons. The fact is that we all care. And many other people should care. We all here care, but many other people in this society should take action. And like the organizers have been doing so many times, for scientific, pragmatic solutions rather than philosophical, extremist solutions. Let me briefly share with all of you that strategies for tobacco control from the time that I have known for the last 30 or 40 years from the field of psychiatry, alcohol, drug abuse, human behavior, and public health has usually only focused on two aspects amongst all this. Enacting and implementing the laws for regulation and for awareness, like Joe Thomas, many other colleagues refer to. What I had always wondered since the 80s, since my early days, is what happens to those who are already addicted? And there will always be some people who are addicted. And so my interest came up from the idea of tobacco cessation, helping those people who are already addicted. And so also please realize, if you haven't, that Like I keep saying, every successfully treated one person is actually preventing tobacco use or initiation or continuation in possibly 1,000, if not 5,000 people, because one of the commonest reasons is modeling. The initiation happens through modeling. I was doing that informally during the AIMS January 1990s, but very first government sector, possibly government or private sector, TCC at IBAS in 2001, tobacco cessation clinic. And then 1 year later, the Ministry of Health and the WHO country office came up with a 12 center network that we coordinated. Uh, Brief thing here. Now, that's important. And Joe Thomas talked about how we don't talk about success or failures, or at least non-success, as I like to call it. Look at this data. 12 centers we looked at that number of cases, and the rate for complete quitting or even significant reduction was there at least 70 to 80% reduction. And the data was at 3 months only 26%, at 6 months 21%, at 9 months only 18%. So, like it is true for most chemical use, any treatment program that aims at complete reduction, now we know, has only a total success rate of over 2 or 3 or 5 years, only about 10 to 20 or 25%. Relapses are most common. I don't know how many of you youngsters remember, but I'm sure my contemporaries remember Mark Twain saying, I have given us, it's very easy to give up smoking. I have given it up a couple of dozen times. Okay. And Mark Twain, like all literators, was very astute about human behavior. I am convinced that literators and thinkers know human behavior better than we claim to do. So that statement for Mark Twain keeps ringing a million times. And that's what this data shows. And that's the basis, my friends, for harm reduction. That if you keep hitting your head against the wall, as I've realized in my lifetime, at least in the first 20 years, alcohol, opioid use, tobacco addiction, if you keep hitting your head against the wall and want most people to abstain completely over 2 or 5 years, get real, that doesn't happen. I use the term biobehavioral disorders, all chemical dependence, but expand that. Behavioral addictions, net, mobile phone, HIV/AIDS that Joe Thomas referred to so well and so much in detail, or even COVID-19 corona. Essentially an infectious disease unlike all others, but related to behavior and brain mechanisms. And so, the success of treatment or prevention in biobehavioral disorders, my friend, is always low to moderate, with the best efforts world over, whatever you might do. Of course, for smoking, there is a passive risk involved. Science, I believe, not just medical science, not just psychiatry and mental health and public health, but medical science, and I think science has learned to be more pragmatic than idealistic. Aim for the best, but also accept the better or the good. What are the leading examples of HR approach? Again, Joe Thomas referred to some of them by his own direct experience and long-term experience. Oral substitution therapy for methadone, that's now a national program. Needless end program that we refer to. Please pause and think. All campaigns against drunken driving are essentially harm reduction approach. You will not be able to completely stop people from drinking. You obviously cannot stop people from driving, even on 31st December. So what do? Designated drivers or campaigns again? Don't drink and drive. Why? Again, passive risk. Please understand. And please register this. I'm going to come back to this towards the end with a rather strong statement about all that we have discussed till now and tobacco discourse in this country happens. Passive risk is about smoking. But yes, for smoking, passive risk is a very useful concept. So it is for drinking and driving campaigns. Protected sex with the deepest, fullest respect for the father of the nation. And don't forget, I originate from Gujarat. My parents and I lived very close to one of the universities set up, Gujarat Vidyapith. No issue about the respect for that great man Gandhiji. But pause. This gentleman missed a few buses, and for example, he genuinely advocated celibacy for family planning. Come on, can't happen. Idealistic solutions when it comes to human behavior do not work. for tobacco use and treatment. Now, that's my point. Unfortunately, most of us, including today, we only talk about smoking because we have still not got over the colonial mindset. The Americans and the Europeans talk about smoking, and so we talk about smoking. Guys, more than half or two-thirds of the tobacco health problem in this country is not smoking. It's oral and other forms of tobacco use. First major issue. And so the whole idea of passive risk, passive smoking, and public opinion controlling smoking is out of the window. I have pan masala, I am not harming anybody else. Okay? So you'll have to have newer paradigms. Register that. Like I said earlier, treatment is also prevention. The second major point that again seems to be missed in all these discourses, policy circle discourses, we have often brought this up. Our ban on all forms of ends or whatever way is actually quite illogical because I don't think we need to advocate in this country for harm reduction in tobacco. That's already there. Nicotine gum, nicotine patch is harm reduction. You are substituting nicotine in a purer, measured form. All that you need to do is be sure that you follow all forms of harm reduction. NRT is already HR, so this government does not need to be advocated with for harm reduction. We need to advocate only that let's use all forms of harm reduction uniformly to make it available. That's the advocacy issue. Oh, and I missed that. Risk benefit analysis. Like I will say, I think in the future slides, I have realized over the last 30 or 40 years in psychiatry, substance abuse, public health, and all of medicine, to the extent that I have interacted, there are no zero risk options. Life, or at least medical clinical decisions, is always about risk versus benefit. And the ends and the way has favorable risk benefit analysis. What you need to realize is treatment versus cure. You don't hit your head against the wall trying to treat and cure everyone. Like I said, all of harm reduction, indeed, I individually think professionally that all of life is about harm reduction. You don't try and eliminate stress. You try and deal with stress more effectively. In 21st century, regulation, like it has been said ad nauseum, since the morning itself, is better than ban. Gujarat, forget Bihar and Tamil Nadu, that since I was referring to. Gujarat has had total prohibition for alcohol since 1960. And I grew up there. So I know the ground reality. Okay. Let the excellent not be the enemy of the good. Really, if there's, like we were discussing informally with Meenakshi earlier, one thing the Nayars might want to pick up is just one simple term box. Like Nike says, do it, get real. That's the logo. Get real. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Desai, for talking about the pragmatic approaches and to get real. I think everybody got the message. And yeah, I hope so too. Okay, so are we breaking for tea for about 10 minutes? Or shall we? All right. So tea will have to wait. Yes. Okay, so any questions here? Anything that anybody would like to say? The students in particular? I hope you were focusing. I'm sure you were, right? Because you're also going to get some homework at the end of this. We do that, no? Every time we give them some homework as well. So yes, anyone has anything to say? So many interesting. Yes, please. That's the mic. Tell us your name, where you're from.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Samir from Jamia Millia Islamia. My question is that what are your
Is for
views?
whom? Your question is for whom, first of all? Anybody? All
anyone.
right.
What are your views on increasing demand of marijuana and consumption of mushrooms, especially among the Indian youths?
Okay, so Dr. Thomas would like to take that? Or, yeah, both of you can, both one by one. Yes.
Where I stay in Melbourne, I just walk down 100 meter. I can legally buy marijuana. If I go to my GP, he'll prescribe MDMA. Why I gave this example is that we are in Indian context, we are in the different stages of, let me put it, the historical evolution of our response towards drug use. But if you switch back your history about maybe 200, 300, 400 years ago, marijuana use was part of many of the religious activities. So we go up and down, and sometimes, I mean, fussy logic of the policy creation. And I would say that, it should be under controls settings. It should be it should be allowed to use it, and it should be accessible, and maybe to the extreme, maybe under the medical supervision. That's my opinion, and that is my knowledge about how it's evolving from other countries. Thank you.
Can I quickly drop, Joe, if you don't mind, a final nuance there? I am with Dr. Joe Thomas when he says that this country and this society has had cannabis use. But again, like we said about tobacco, please appreciate the traditional use of cannabis in this country was from one part of the plant, the oral bhang, most often. The smoked marijuana is a different matter. Okay, just to be sure. Now, there's good research in this country mostly and a bit elsewhere, that the memory deficit, long-term dementia kind of issues occur more with bhang. Okay. The psychotic or psychiatric consequences occur more with marijuana. The psychotic breakdown happens more because of marijuana. And so, again, the Western and the South Asian concerns are different. Having said that, I'm with Dr. Joe Thomas completely in as much as that even larger issues. We have in this country been far too idealistic about public health. We need to get realistic, as all of us are saying. Um, there will have to be a realization of the spectrum of options. One is decriminalization. Don't punish those who use cannabis. Second is regulation. Third is actively encouraging use. You have open shops, coffee shops. Now, there might be some debate, but surely there is enough reason to decriminalize cannabis use, possibly regulated use, like we are talking about every other aspect. Um, this country is moving toward that, and it will. But be sure to differentiate the oral and the smoked cannabis use. They are very different. Uh, allow me this. What is the gradation of drugs, if at all you like? And this is not absolute at all, but tea and coffee that Lottie referred to, that's actually one of the substances of use. Don't forget. And I plead guilty completely. Okay. Tea and coffee to tobacco to alcohol to cannabis to opioids to LSD or whatever. And like Joe Thomas and I both said, for opioid, substitution is now accepted. For tobacco, now we are saying yes, NRD is accepted. For cannabis, I don't know why we don't accept substitution or regulated use. So I'm completely with you on that, sir.
All right.
Ma'am, one question.
Yes, please.
The question is with Mr. Joe Thomas. Since you mentioned that the banning of tobacco use is not a viable option because banning of tobacco will lead to the emergent, like it will lead to the dire consequences. Like we see in Bhutan, he prohibited and in 2004 Bhutan banned the smoking and then the smuggling of smoking related product is started. So in this regard, what in your opinion, what role can policy makers play in reducing tobacco related issues, and what strategy do you recommend for the raising awareness about dangers of the youth of tobacco use?
I think Dr. Desai's presentation, he gave a list of activities. So this is not about complete prevention alone. There are different options: education, awareness, support programs, treatment opportunities. So different context, different setting, different target population give different options. under the overall broader regulatory framework, including in certain setting complete prohibition. See, for example, look at the notice there, no smoking. Here it's completely prohibition. So that way we look at a cafeteria approach, and you have a long list of menu to explore that. But the application of this at what context, which setting is important part of. For example, universities, public spaces, there's complete ban, absolutely no doubt. But your domestic setting, you may still use it. But at the same time, again, what you can use it, then there are public pressure in the domestic place. In the families, there will be public pressure. I mean, public and the family pressure that to reduce it. Even though legally you're allowed to use it, your family members may not allow you to. So there are other mechanisms coming because of the education opportunities. So I'm not saying that complete ban is also part of the package, but then there are different options also should be there, including the even the taxation. And hopefully, most probably, the budget, today's budget, there'll be a higher increase on alcohol and tobacco. This evening, you can see that, right? Thank you.
Okay, we just have time for one more question. So who wants to? Okay. And at the end, we'll see if we have time, then all of you can shoot your questions. But one more.
Hello. My name is Samir Khan and I'm from Jamia Millia Islamia. My question is to Dr. Joe. Sir, of what I have understood of your talk, that there are centers which provide these units or packages, for a safe consumption of the drugs. So all you have to do is to just go there and they'll give you, it is free of cost, as what you have told, right? So, sir, my question is basically the person or the people who consume the drugs, they don't consume it openly, right? They covertly like consume it, especially away from their family and especially from the neighborhood, right? So my question is, how they'll reach these medical or these places or these centers? I believe they won't. Actually, they'll never reach there, like to collect these, packages. So how would you deal with that? Like, what is the actual thing? Thank you.
I briefly mentioned that the methodology of how you implement or practically how you implement harm reduction strategies. That is one issue. We need much more experience, data, and evidence. If I may use experience and data from the harm reduction among the injection drug users, we work through the peer outreach workers. In India, we have probably more than 10,000 peer outreach workers specifically looking at harm reduction in the area of drug use. This allowed, government funded, but very modest remuneration they're receiving. So outreach workers they are the peer outreach workers. The word itself is they may be ex-users, current users, regulated users. So they're working for some institutional framework. And drug users, they know where to get it. They have some kind of a comradeship. And also when you talk about drug use, why people use drugs, it's also creating a subculture. I've sat with drug users in many parts of the world. So when you take the drugs and the friendship they share food, they share friendship, they share stories, and they share life on a small subpopulation level. And also, the other day I was talking to in another conference about substance abuse, drug addiction. So I asked a question: what is negative? What is the opposite of drug addiction? So then, even I was trying to understand, what is opposite of drug addiction? Opposite of drug addiction is socially connected. So that's my answer. How do you connect people in the society? This connection comes through peer outreach workers, your friendship network, cultural network, real social network. The way a society where some group of people are marginalized, the marginalization, you cope with marginalization through using abuse of drugs. And I'm not against the use of drugs, but then drug use becoming abusive, that's normally an outcome of a subgroup formation.
Allow me two brief quick responses, my friend, and let me talk about it over lunch. One, see the trouble of the kind of thinking that you have is not you, us, our generation. We have dinned it into our head that everything unpleasant, everything improper must be under the table. Right? Covered up. That's the problem. Don't push things under the carpet. Allow me, I must share this since there are so many youngsters here, and I never get tired of this. Sex, for example, and like you spoke about HIV and pandemic. See, the trouble is pushing the things under carpet to the extent that I saw this wonderful TV ad. Very briefly, a father enters son's room. Of course, 21st century, knocks and says, "Can I come in, son?" And the son says, "Yes, dad, please come in." And he sits down and says, "Son, now you are turning 16. We should talk about sex." You know what happens? The son turns around and says, "Yes, dad, tell me what do you want to know." Okay. Second practical aspect, what happens in opioid substitution, drugs, or needle exchange program is most often at the clinic you are supposed to use it and return the needle or syringe, or even the drugs. So your apprehension is correct. It shouldn't go out in my pocket. I sit there, consume it, be there for 2 hours. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Desai. And now quickly, let's move on to the next session, the second session, which will be about regulatory confusion in India. So to take this session forward, we are going to start with Dr. Sunila Garg. And a few words about Dr. Sunila Garg. She currently chairs the Program Advisory Committee, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare. She's a skilled medical education and public health management professional. Her areas of expertise include epidemiology, program evaluation, global health, and healthcare management. She's an advisor with ICMR, DBT, and on expert committees of WHO. Dr. Garg has recently been awarded the Fellowship of National Academy of Medical Sciences and conferred with Public Health Impact Award. She's also amongst the top 2% of the World Scientific Database by Elsevier 2022 and 2023. So over to you, Dr. Sunila.
Thank you, Dr. Loti. Loti.
Yeah.
We are used to calling. And thank you, everyone. And I'm so proud that, basically Policy Circle has taken this, area of when we talk of tobacco, and particularly when we are talking of, now is the era when we talk of tobacco end game. And then we are also, but for that, we need to talk about, tobacco harm reduction part also. And I'm sure, due to all this rain and stagnation and D&D flyover and all that, quite a bit of must have been covered. And I was expecting a cup of tea in morning, which has already happened, but it's a nice day to have a cup of tea, even if we can have on our tables, if it is possible, right? But then anyway, we go ahead further with that. That basically you can see that, basically we have to focus on that grow food, not tobacco, number one. Number two is that don't let tobacco take your breath away. That is important. And this came, with regard to, we had, a major project on addressing smokeless tobacco in Asia. And quite a number of my, younger colleagues are sitting over here across. I can recognize quite a number of them. And they have been practically involved in this project. And particularly Akash, who is sitting, he further, has been, I have had the privilege of having them as my postgraduates also. And when he worked, and the papers have been published in Asia Pacific journals and all that. And I have sent, copies of those papers to, Sachna, so that, basically that they can be distributed to all of you. 5 papers I've just shared so that you can get a copy of those papers. So that will give you a lot of things, because, when we were looking at children who were, in 5th, 6th, 7th, I could never imagine that, they would also be involved in consumption of smokeless tobacco. And this project was being carried out in 3 countries, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. And then I told Akash, why don't you take it in the older students also? So then, information comes out more clearly. And then we found that, quite a number of students were taking smokeless tobacco. And the reason was they saw their teachers taking that. So that was one of the important things, and that has emerged very clearly. And that caught the news of media also. And then they started calling us that I said, this is the fact. Actually, we need to look at the ground realities. So primarily, I'm sure that, we all have, just a minute. Yeah. So we all know that tobacco epidemic is one of the biggest public health threats, and this is why I bring the PowerPoint presentation, is so that those youngsters who want to take, I'm going to leave over here. You can have a look at that part also. We all know that, all forms of tobacco are harmful, and there is no safe level of exposure to tobacco. We are all aware of, and please be youngsters, be aware of this fact. ये नहीं कि थोड़ा कम ले लिया, ज़्यादा ले लिया. It's not there. We do have a lot of legislations also, but then they pose a major challenge in terms of implementation also. And we all know that apart from now, we have started talking about smokeless form of tobacco, illicit trade of tobacco. Article 5.3 is there. But then, I'll sooner come to that part also, COTPA, FCTC, and all that. But we all know that cigarette smoking is the most common form of tobacco smoke when we talk worldwide. Okay, in India, we are also talking of smokeless tobacco because we are all aware of the fact that particularly, amongst women, there is a lot of misconception with regard to smokeless tobacco because they will think कि हमारा our gas बनती है, digestion में help होता है, and all these facts are quite common. But we all know that in terms of antenatal mothers, if we are talking of that, they are, this results in low birth weight babies. Low birth weight babies are more prone for infections and all that. So it is important to look from a further perspective as well. And we all know that it is the use of smokeless tobacco, particularly, is highly addictive and damaging to health, as I've already told you. And the nicotine in smokeless tobacco is, remember, it's more easily absorbed, as compared to smoking cigarettes. So that part also you need to remember. And we all know that basically, despite all, jitna bhi hum evidence bana le, jitna bhi, as Dr. Desai and I was listening to Joe and all that, that basically whatever we may publicize across, people do continue to take smokeless and smoked form of tobacco. And particularly when in, healthcare professions do have access to range of strategies when we talk about pharmacological interventions, psychological interventions to help support smoking cessation. And let me tell you over here, quite a number of initiatives government of India has kind of successfully uh, launched, like say no to crackers, number one, that was the thing. Or our polio unmulan sena, which was created out of school children. So I think that schools are the best places where the teachers have to be very convinced. When we were undertaking this study of addressing smokeless tobacco in Asia, so they said, ma'am, the students will learn about this and they'll start into it. That I said, no, it's not the way. And since it was a form of a project, we had to seek permission from the parents and all, everybody, so that because consent is also important and assent is also important in school children. So those of you who are not aware of this, I'm sure all of you would be aware of the research conduct and why do we need to take consent and assent form. So that is important to look at that. But then again, we all know that people who are still, despite I think Dr. Nimesh has spent all his life, on counseling and, not we talk about, the medical strategies little later. But first we have to need to aim at behavior change communication, that is important. And that is where, harm reduction strategies can help reduce the risks which are associated from both smoked and smokeless form of tobacco, especially when we talk of the effects of them. And all of you are aware of the recent ad which is there related to tobacco and menstrual hygiene के तुम इससे cigarette खरीदने से अच्छा एक clean menstrual pad खरीद देते हैं, right? So when we are talking of that, so it's not a lie, it's a fact. We can buy lives if we don't, consume tobacco. That is important, but it घुसता नहीं है easily. That's where we need to come to terms with the behavior and we need to aim at the interventions. And we also know that, finding interventions for each patient. Remember, we have to tailor make it according to the individuals. One intervention will not, one size does not fit all. Every individual is different. And then we all know that particularly we do have, reduction strategies in place and we need to look at that part. And I'm not going to go much into the detail, but only part you have to remember that tobacco is killing almost 8 million people in a year around the world. So that is where we have to be aware of the fact. And 80% of the 1.3 billion tobacco users worldwide, they are living in countries like India. That is important. And though GATS has shown, our Global Adult Tobacco Survey has shown a decline, but still we have got miles to go. That is important. And also we know that, our death accordingly is also high in countries like low middle income countries, which, and majority of them, basically when we talk of India is a big country. Now we have crossed China. We are 140 crores. Every time when we talk about our youth power, young power, every time you'd be listening our Prime Minister focusing on youth power. So youth power has to be utilized in a very, very positive manner. We need to look at that part. Okay. So we also know that, according to ICMR reports, those of you who need data also, so tobacco related cancers account for 27% of the country's cancer burden in 2020. That is important. Another part is we also know that India is the second leading consumer of tobacco products after China, with nearly 29% of the adults using tobacco in one form or the other. And again, around 13.5 lakh, preventable deaths occur per year. That is important. So we could have prevented these deaths. So another form is that we also lose 1% of our GDP to the diseases and early deaths from tobacco use. It is according to our recent WHO study also. And smoking is accounting for 74%, and smokeless tobacco attributes to costs of about 26%. So all these figures are important when you are doing cost benefit analysis, when you are going to do the intervention. This is how you are going to convince policymakers. We do have tobacco control program, but why we do have only have to write, or rather than doing away with tobacco, we only write that tobacco is injurious to health, harmful to health. आप लोगों ने किस how many of you have seen the packets of smokeless tobacco, गुटखा या सुपारी तंबाकू, कितने लोगों ने देखे हैं पैकेट्स? Have you seen the advertisements on that? किस तरीके की होती हैं? They are all fudged. They are not clear. हम कहते हैं कि we should have plain packaging. 80% should be occupied by our, that it is injurious to health. तो हम निकाल क्यों नहीं देते? When we know that it is injurious to health, we need to take action in this regard, because we need to, when we are fighting, I think Dr. Nimesh will remember, and that was related to occupational health when we talked about cement and asbestos. And we knew that asbestos is causing mesothelioma. So, but then, the lobbies are very strong, but you have to prove your point very strongly at each and every point, because the number of, amount of money which we are spending on, treating these individuals is far more than what we are earning the revenue from tobacco. So that is where we need to focus on this part, and we need to keep that thing in mind. And apart from that, if the child starts consuming, or the youth, our youngsters from fifth class, they start consuming smokeless tobacco, you remember the number of years ahead that person, he or she has got. It is not limited only to he. Remember, it's the she part also, which is very, very important part. And I remember, last year my husband is a pediatrician, and he was discussing quite a number of times, the women come and they discuss that whenever they are expecting the second child also, Dr. Garg, I do smoke, but please don't tell me not to smoke. He said, I will still say that, because you see, when you are having that, you see, you have to, yeah, yes. You see, you cannot just stop yourself from telling. He said that I'm going to communicate all this. Now the option lies with you. So that is important part which we have to remember, that how difficult it is to change the behavior of the individual. So we need to focus on that part. Okay. So this is also, we know that, educational institutions are pertinent places to learn about tobacco control interventions. And but basically we need to see that still in our curriculum, these issues, they remain neglected. And quite a number of times, all of you are here in this room, and particularly my young students are also here, that how many times in the total curriculum, when we are talking of now, one of the major agendas of the major task forces of the government of India is what? NCDs, non-communicable diseases. Whether we talk of diabetes, hypertension, stroke, cancers, whatever you talk of, the underlying factor is substantial number, apart from obesity, which is, because of our lifestyle, which is also because of smoking and all that. Because yesterday I was doing one show on NDTV about the screen time. So screen time is not only plain screen time. That particular person is smoking also, that particular person is taking, I'll say ultra processed foods also. चलो हम कर भी रहे हैं, हम सोशल मीडिया पे भी हम चिप्स भी खा रहे हैं, हम स्मोकलेस टोबैको भी ले रहे हैं, स्मोक टोबैको भी ले रहे हैं, ultimately which is resulting in your couch potato syndrome also. But at the same time, which is a predisposing factor for all the problems which we are looking at. So you can see that all things are related. So time has come where we have to take this situation head on, rather than, we all know that, people have lost their positions when they have started addressing about tobacco, but we need to, kind of see that, at the highest level. And if you start talking, it's a sensitive issue, because whenever you have to talk about, because last time when I was talking about, ultra processed foods, and we had to take a dialogue with the food safety standards of India along with WHO. Not till now we are talking about. You tell me whether ultra processed foods have gone out of our lives. They have not gone out of bus 2 minute Maggie, bus chips hain, but all these things are still there. And we are only telling them, but why they are not taken off? That is important part which we have to remember. Okay, so this is how the literature published on tobacco use has proven that several factors they contribute to tobacco use. That's what I told you that our students told that they saw the teachers taking. So there could be so many factors around, and we do have, total literacy campaign, but do we have, lot of people who are children who are school dropouts also. And because India is very diverse, we do have 36 states and union territories, so we need to look from that perspective also. Okay. So we also knew that, our Union Health Minister, Mansukh Mandaviya ji, resides over and he releases the report on global youth tobacco survey, which was done, GATS 4 in 2019, which also talked about, our fact sheet, but though it showed the 42% decline, among student children, of consumption of tobacco, but then, primarily the use of any form of tobacco is higher amongst boys than girls, but it is, quite, I'll say, depressing that, when we talk of the girls, they are going to go through their, reproductive cycle also. So that's where, for boys, it is going to affect your body. Apart from girls, it is also affecting their overall body and all the organs and all that. But then all the systems, but we also know that if she's pregnant, it's going to affect the baby as well. So that's where we need to look at that part. So it is a decline, but we need to see that what actions we can do further also. Okay. So we also know that since 2003, how many of you have studied this COTPA Act? That what is happening to, are we implementing all the forms of all the components of COTPA? Because we did have, from 2003 onwards, a comprehensive legislation known as Cigarette and Other Tobacco Products Act. And that is, and we all know that, and it is also dealing with not only, the advertisement, prohibition, regulation, trade, it is dealing with commerce, it is dealing with supply and distribution. But the purpose of this was to discourage the use of tobacco consumption products in order to protect the masses from health hazards. But when we took up the research in this direction, it's the implementation part which is very, very poor. One thing I like to say, and we have a contemporary from WHO, and this is the only program for which there is framework of convention. For no other problem except for tobacco, we have framework of Convention of Tobacco Control by WHO. That is important what you have to remember. So what we say that, one of the important things is there should be no sale to minors by minors. Those of you who have practically indulged in this exercise, you will see that the shop is in somebody's name, but who is selling over there? एक छोटा बच्चा वहां पे बैठा होता है, तो आप लीगली नहीं कह सकते कि आपने खाली स्पॉट कर लिया, बट अदरवाइज बिकॉज लीगली इट इज दैट शॉप इज इन समबडीज नेम, बट ही से तू 10 मिनट बैठ जा, 15 मिनट बैठ जा, 25 मिनट बैठ जा. So this is so very common. And then have we seen that, mushrooming of shops? I every day fight in front of my house. There's a young boy who was, they take my clothes for ironing and all that, and he has opened a shop right in front of DM's house. The small boy sits with a packets of tobacco, particularly when talk of that. There are chips, there are this every day, whenever I pass through, I said, you are sitting in front of DM's house. And but the system is also blind to that whole fact. So we need to kind of see that it's, but together, definitely, I'm sure that we would be able to make a difference. Please see that every one of you sitting in this room, if you see somebody doing that, particularly when you talk of a young child, and if you are able to talk to even 5 people, I'm sure this will be a snowballing effect. So that is where our mere talking does not help over here. We need to kind of be acting at all fronts. And I'm sure that when we meet next time, we'll be able to take this discussion in a very practical manner. So that is important. So this is how the, legislation and the Gazette of India talked about, COTPA part. So we also know that, we have got how to support cessation. We do have, 5 A's, when we are talking of asking about tobacco use at every opportunity. So please see that whenever all of us who are dealing with the patients or going to the clinics and all that, do not lose an opportunity. The person may have come with something else also, but do ask, kind of, you can relate it. We as doctors are quite competent enough to ask, systematically about smoking status, then, advise unequivocally about, the usage of, particularly the smokers to quit. Make a beginning. The behavior change is something which will come at last. First is the knowledge part that is important. Then you have to assess the person's degree of addiction and readiness to quit, and then assist. And basically, you have to you have to focus on smoking cessation and arrange a schedule for follow-up appointments. And if you want, we can practically request Dr. Desai is there, and so that we can arrange for practical sessions, to see that how children do watch about, the cessation part, because quite a number of times it remains only in theory. So that's where it is important to practically see that part also. Okay. So basically, we all know that, we have a stepwise approach to that, which I've talked about. So I'll not spend much of time in that. And we all know that, people should be offered comprehensive medical and psychological counseling. There is no this thing about counseling part. So that part you have to remember, and we will talk about that part also. Okay. So then another part is that we must know that, we must track this problem very, very carefully. So good monitoring tracks the extent and character of tobacco epidemic. And, it indicates how best to tailor the policies, right? When we are talking about overall assessment, what is a smoke form, smokeless form amongst pregnant women, amongst other group of people. So then we can have our policies also tailor-made accordingly. I mean, meeting में बात करते हैं. So always remember that tobacco users, they need help to quit, and it is not easy. It's easily said on my PowerPoint, but it is very, very challenging. And that's where, you have to change the whole environment as a whole. So when we talk about the schools, when we talk of academic institutions, when we talk about, and it is not one thing. When we are talking about, as I was talking about mushrooming of shops across institutions, कोई भी चीज 100 yards के अंदर नहीं होनी चाहिए. But is it practically there? Nobody even bothers to see that. So that is where we need to look from that perspective.
Actually, alcohol shop between two colleges. Later, there's a common wall in between. Alcohol shop.
उसके साथ में सिगरेट भी होगा.
Cigarette, yes, सब कुछ है वहाँ.
So you're all, when we finish this, so please share your experiences as well, whatever is this. So, counseling and medication can, more than, primarily we need to see that, they can double the chances of successful quitting. It's not only kind of first focus on awareness creation and counseling. That is one thing. But then, as was pointed out by Dr. Desai also, medications are there, harm reduction strategies are there. But we need to, that will not work in one go. That is important. And we all know that basically National Comprehensive Cessation Services are there, and every dental college is now supposed to have a cessation this thing also. Clinic. Apart from that, we have online counseling services also. So please see that you make use of that wherever possible in making your clients to do that, and or basically in making your peers to do that. And that is where it has got to be not a clinic movement, but it has got to be community movement. That is important. We need to see that. Okay. So then, when as I was showing you, why did I show that? So this is a very clear picture. And that means pictorial health warnings work. But then it will only work when there are clear pictorial warnings. And somebody should demonstrate that this is where is the pack and this is what is written on that pack. Somebody should understand. But ऐसा clearly मैंने देखा नहीं है करके, these are all, for demonstration purposes. Most of the times these are all fudged. Okay. So, but then hard hitting anti-tobacco mass media campaigns and pictorial health warnings, they will prevent the children and other vulnerable groups, provided they are available very clearly. Number two, they are explained. All antenatal clinics and all, I'll say that they must have very clearly, messages. And please presume that, the people can be vulnerable to do this. We should not say that he or she will not do this. So that's where it is important to focus on pictorial health warnings also. And then again, bans on tobacco advertisement, they do lower the tobacco consumption. And it's tobacco advertisement promotion, basically when we talk of promotion and sponsorship, increases and sustained tobacco use by effectively recruiting new tobacco users and discouraging tobacco users from quitting. So that's the point which you have to see, that primarily it's the other way around also, which we need to look at that part. But if we have to make this advertisement work, so we have to not only leave the advertisement as it is, but it is, focus on that part, and we should not be on that side, that if you are advertising more, it will help people to, kind of indulge into tobacco use. So these also work, but you have to make substantial use. But then before you put this advertisement, please make sure that this advertisement also works. So how much time have I got?
Bus, because I
Okay,
think we have a
okay.
doctor
Okay.
waiting online.
Okay, so then,
Right.
also taxation,
Harper.
we are aware of this fact, and
Dr. Harper?
illicit trade of tobacco.
It's
When
done.
we were doing this study, so I'll just take 2 minutes and finish it off. And so in this part, I'll say that, quite a number of times we do get, our packets which are there from Bangladesh or from other countries. So this is illicit trade. You have to see that, and then nothing is really written that where it is manufactured and all that. So that is also very, very common. When you go to Connaught Place and, look at one of these shops which is selling tobacco, you'll find that you'll get packets from nth number of countries. So that is where it is important. And that's where, as I said, that we do have, FCTC in place from WHO, and we do have Empower. Empower means, basically monitor tobacco use and prevention policies. P is to protect people from tobacco use. O is to offer help to quit tobacco use. W is to warn about the dangers of tobacco. E is to enhance bans on tobacco use, advertisement, promotion, and sponsorship. And R is to raise taxes on tobacco. So this is how the 6 Empower measures are, and please look at that part also. So, and then we do have the efforts for tobacco control, which I've already talked about: health education, advocacy, litigation, then, focus campaigns, World No Tobacco Day activities, which you're all aware of, television and audio advertisements, then organizing health melas and outdoor publicity slogans and visual through, all the panels, whether they're bus panels or train panels and all that. And then, but then production of information, education, and IC, which is understood by our Indian population. So that has got to be locally adoptable. So these are the parts of, we do have a tobacco control program, but non-governmental organizations can help, individuals can help, what role they can play in FCTC, that is also very important. And remember, last year when I was the president of IPSM, we did bring out, advisory for tobacco control, and what is the role of academic institutions, capacity building when we talk of, tobacco cessation clinics, when research, that is something which needs to be regularly undertaken, and also policy advocacy. That's our role also. So thank you so much. So basically, we all know that, how many, this is about thousands of, we say that, illnesses can be there, and itne zyada, it's poisonous almost. So thank you so much for, patient listening. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer, but then I believe
yeah,
somebody
no.
is waiting online.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
after that, we can.
Yeah,
answer.
so thank you so much, Dr. Sunila Garg. And you very well talked about the pragmatic approach that is required in order to have, proper tobacco harm reduction and the tobacco control that you just talked about. And now we have with us Dr. Peter Harper with us from London. So is he online, please? Can we have him on screen?
इसके बाद जाते हैं।
Good morning.
Yes. Welcome, Dr. Peter Harper.
Thank
Once again, you were here last year as well, which was very
Yes.
you. And I'd just like to say a few words about you, Dr. Harper. Dr. Peter Harper has been a leading consultant at Guy's and St. Thomas Hospital for over 25 years. He's both an accredited physician and a medical oncologist. He's also one of the 4 founding partners of the London Oncology Clinic. He's acknowledged globally for his work in researching new drugs and developing innovative cancer treatment. He's currently a member of 8 pharmaceutical company advisory boards and is a member of 16 professional bodies from around the world, including board membership of a committee of the American Society of Clinical Oncologists. In 2002, he was awarded the prestigious Sino del Duca Medal in 2004 in recognition of his work in developing new anti-cancer and vaccine therapies. For his role in advising the French government in strategic cancer care, he was appointed a Chevalier of the Légion d'Honneur, a rare distinction for a foreign national. So thank you so much for being with us this morning, Dr. Harper. And he will be talking about international experiences with THR and public health communication strategies. So over to you, Dr. Harper.
Thank you. I think you've got a filmed production just to make sure that everything went to time.
Yes. So do we?
If
have
it's
a film?
there, we can do it. If not, I can.
Yeah. Is the film there, please? No.
No.
All right. Well, I'm afraid you'll have to start, Dr. Harper, please. I think the film is.
Have they got the slides there, or can I share the screen?
So are the slides there? Just give us a moment, Dr. Harper.
Yeah. If not, I can.
Yes.
I'm happy to do so.
Okay, sir. Then you share your screen, please.
Okay. Let me just go on. Now, where is that share screen? I don't think you're allowing me to share screen.
Oh.
Yeah,
the technical team can.
Happy
It's
to
allowed
do so.
from our side, Dr. Harper. It's allowed, they say.
Oh. Sorry, I do apologize. It's not showing me that. What a pity.
Take your time, Dr. Harper. It's all right.
Well, no, it's just not on this. It's not allowing me, which is weird. 1 minute. It will,
Yes.
I'm sure. Let's pull this down. Share screen. Here we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it up?
Yes, we can see it, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Apologize.
That's fine.
Great pleasure to be with you today, and thank you again for inviting me. So as you rightly said, I'm an oncologist. I was at Guy's Hospital all my working life as a consultant. The role I have at present is as a harm reduction consultant to Philip Morris. And just briefly, why I've done that is because my predominant interest had been lung cancer. And I was really overwhelmed during my formative years with small cell lung cancer, which of course is almost 100% smoking induced. And that was a result of course, post-war smoking. And one of the things nations really have to always understand is that when your median age is quite low, you're actually not seeing the problems that are going to come to you, which came to us in the post-war period with an older population. And that is, it's going to take you 15 or 20 or 25 years of smoking before you really do see the massive problems that you're going to get with smoking, particularly with cancer and, of course, bronchitis and emphysema. So what you don't see yet in your numbers is what is going to happen. And one of the things that came to me is that we're really doing very well with our treatment of lung cancers, but it's extraordinarily expensive. When I say well, we're moving median survivals from months to years, depending on the subtype of that cancer. But in the end, who can afford treatment for 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 years with immunotherapy? I don't think any nation in the world can afford it, which means we've got to do something about turning off the tap of cancer. So as you rightly said, and I very much enjoyed the last presentation, 22% of the total global population smoke. They use tobacco in one form or another. But behind this number is a number of other hidden numbers, and particularly amongst those is, as you've said, the gender differences. So if we look in the world global smoking and tobacco use, 36.7% of the global population of men smoke and 7.8% of the global population of women smoke. These are hugely different proportions. If we look across the world, and unfortunately you can see India here, you can see the lemon yellow tinges are those where we're making some impact on smoking, getting it down to below 15%. And as you go towards the orange numbers, as you rightly said, you're up at the 30 and 30+%. And here you're still where we were in the UK 50 years ago at 50% of the population. And don't forget, when we look at smoking numbers, on the whole, we're looking at legal numbers, legal cigarettes, not illegal. And like many illegal subjects, the problem you've got is that you don't quite know what you're smoking. Now, here I'm looking at the proportion of smokers in Great Britain, and what we can say is it does continue to decrease. So if we look back at the 1974, and this is to 2020, we can see that in total we were up at that 50% plus of legal cigarette smoking and use. We can now look, and we're now down towards 12-13% of the population smoking. And I'll go into some of the legislation changes that have led to that, and also what else Public Health England, an independent body, has done, which has been extraordinary and very, very effective. So if we look at the state of smoking in the UK now, and this is taken from 2020, so we've done rather better now, 12.9% smoking rate, 6.4 million people. So this is, of course, a population of 58 million, not a population of 1.2 or 3 billion. Smoking is highest amongst those between 25 and 34 years. The prevalence is higher in Scotland than it is in Northern Ireland. E-cigarette use, which, of course, we now have in the UK, and I will describe to you, is about 8.7%, which is 4.5 million, and continuing to increase since 2014 when reporting began. It's marginally higher amongst men than women. We're almost equal smoking in this between genders, and e-cigarette use is highest in the 16 to 24-year-olds. There's other things hidden behind, and of course, what we know is that you've going to have different smoking rates in different parts of the population. In Richmond-on-Thames, it's well below 5%. That's in southern England and very prosperous. But if you look here, the unemployed, people without regular employment, are the heaviest smokers. If you're in employment, or you've chosen or are decided not to work, you're amongst the lowest. But if you look at this prevalence, it's the same as 1992. So we're looking at 30 years of making really no difference in smoking rates for some of our population. So what's the UK context? We've looked at this number before. The UK government is on track to miss its 2030 smoke-free England target. They've recently introduced a generational ban for all tobacco products to be sold to people born in 2009 and later. And I think these generational bans, which were started in New Zealand, but they've now dropped it, may or may not be a good idea. I personally think they're a difficult idea. And that's despite the fact that the younger population is less and less likely to start smoking. And our under 16-year-olds, and don't forget it's illegal to sell cigarettes in the UK to anybody under 18, our under 16-year-olds, it's a bit less than 2% now. So if you're looking at those who are now 15-year-old, 2009, they really aren't smoking. They're doing lots of other bad things, but they're not smoking. So we believe that this approach lacks differentiation between who is smoking and the different tobacco products that are available, combustible versus non-combustible, and is disconnected from the science of harm. And we believe the focus should be on the 6.4 million smokers. I do apologize, I didn't have it on full screen. Now, if we look at smoking across the world, and here we're looking at 4 nations. To the left of your screen, Australia, which always had the toughest, strictest tobacco smoking rules, and it was 16% in 2013. UK high 18s, I put it as 18.6%. New Zealand dead on 18%, and Japan, the bad boy, at 19%. Now, what we're going to see is that if we move on 3 years to 2016, Australia had gone down by 0.9%. And what you're going to see always is that our tobacco harm control processes of offering nicotine replacement therapy, counseling, and everything else, they do reduce smoking rates by about 0.3% a year. So you're going to always, every 3 years, get roughly 1% reduction in smoking by current methods. What we can see in the UK is something else had happened, and we'd gone from the high 18s to 16%. That is, we'd gone down by 2.9%. And that's because in 2015, Public Health England, which has been a remarkably good organization for this, said that other forms of nicotine, particularly e-cigarettes, were 95% safer. Now, one can argue about whether nicotine devices are 95% safer or 90% less harmful, or 85%. You can argue, but they're not going to be more harmful. That is 100% for sure. And they are very, very significantly less harmful, as shown by the reduction in carcinogens that you inhale, and tars or soot and microparticles that you inhale. So there's no two ways about that they've got less damage in them than a combustible cigarette. If we look at New Zealand, that had gone down by 1.6%. So again, roughly double the normal rate to 16%. And Japan, the usual 1%, 0.3% a year. Now, if we look what happened 3 years later, there's something pretty dramatic has happened in smoking rates in Japan. They've gone from the worst bad boy to best boy in the class or best girl in the class at 13%, a huge reduction over the 6 years of 6%. And that is because they, in fact, adopted heats. They adopted heated tobacco, not vapes or e-cigarettes. New Zealand, again, adopting all methods, had come down very well. The UK had come down really quite dramatically by 4.5%. And yet again in Australia, which does not allow any legal nicotine other than a cigarette, though you can have your NRT and you can be registered to as an addict to receive other forms of cigarettes, but you have to be registered. They'd come down by the usual 0.3% a year, 1.8%. So what you can see is that you can dramatically alter combustible cigarette sales. So harm reduction is what I've been preaching for a great number of years. And this came out of my initial sessions at the ASCO meeting on stigma. There's a lot of blame when a patient comes in who's a smoker and has lung cancer. And don't forget, 8 or 9 out of 10 coming through any lung cancer clinic door will be smokers. There's a bit of a blame. You knew what you were doing. Now, we don't blame car accidents. We don't blame people for everything else that happens to them, but they're equally culpable. So the concept of harm reduction, or what I might now call lifestyle medicine, is accepting that some level of our bad behaviors are inevitable. Therefore, target to minimize the consequence of that behavior, not the behavior itself only. Of course, I want to stop you smoking. Of course, the only thing to do is quit. You cannot quit. When we look at lung cancer clinics, over 60% of smokers continue to smoke despite the diagnosis of lung cancer. It is very, very difficult to quit when you're under emotional stress. Hence also perhaps the unemployed smoking more. So when we look at other issues, driving fast, we legislate. We help minimize the cost of driving fast. We put in seatbelts, airbags, disc brakes, crumple zones. We know about diet. We try and preach that you should be a better weight. But if you've abused your body, we give you statins to lower your cholesterol. We give you stents if you block something. We give you anti-aggregates. For me in the UK and perhaps in Australia, sun tanning is very unhealthy, with the malignant melanoma rates in Australia being off the Richter scale in the past. So you use sunscreens and you legislate. You don't let children go out in the playground without a hat. Sweet tooth, we're trying to look at sugar replacement, and we're trying to replace perhaps the issue of fat in the diet with a concept that you better look at the sugar in the diet. And as has already been mentioned today, as I heard, sex, we give safe sex and telling me to wake up and speak to you. And we give you condoms and vaccinations. So what about smoking? I believe that there is a role for looking at less harmful, not harmless, less harmful methods of taking nicotine. And I would question whether it's ethical to ignore this. So Public Health England has done the job for us in the UK. Every minute someone is admitted to hospital from smoking. Within the UK, 79,000 deaths a year. Their new review reinforces the finding that vaping is a fraction of the risk of smoking. The belief is at least 95% less harmful and of negligible risk to bystanders. And I think that's also very important. There's no slipstream toxicity with vaping. It is exhaled as the only issue. Yet only over half of smokers falsely believe that vaping is as harmful as smoking, or they don't know. So when we do the questionnaires, most people see the plume of smoke coming off a vape, which is water vapor and glycerol, and they think it's smoke. They say, well, you're just as bad as anything else. Well, it isn't, because you're not getting the carcinogens. Reducing the prevalence of smoking by 1 percentage point each year for 10 years would prevent getting on for 70,000 deaths between the ages of 35 and 74. So don't forget, if you start smoking at 10, 11, or 12, you're going to have your 20 plus years of smoking by the age of 35. And that's why I say in India, look at your median age as well as everything else. You're going to have a problem of massive proportions unless you do something about it. And it's also the young age of these patients and these deaths. If you start at a young age, you're going to reach your 20 years pretty quickly. It would be tragic if thousands of smokers who could quit with the help of an e-cigarette were put off due to false fears about their safety. So here we're talking about helping to quit. Here we're talking about a change in attitude of both the nation and legislation. So my conclusion is obvious: smoking is a major issue in public health, a leading cause of cancer, but of course, bronchitis, emphysema, vascular disease, cardiac disease. Quitting is by far the best option. Current strategies have failed everywhere in the world. You need the whole story to understand the success or failure, and we need a new solution. We have to reduce the numbers. So though prevalence is falling, the problem is our increase in population has meant that you still, as rightly said again today, over 1 billion actual smokers. And unless the number of smokers comes down, nothing will change as to what's coming through the clinic doors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harper. I think that was a very conclusive discussion, and whatever you said, the harm and the burden and how it is to be dealt with. So I'd like to say thank you to you once again. And is it very cold in London?
Yes. Yeah, I've got my jumper on. Yeah.
Right, because we're all also shivering here. Delhi is almost as
good.
bad as London today. So the weather
I'm
is
with you
enough.
on. I'm in London. I'm in Delhi on Saturday. I'll bring my jumper.
So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Harper.
I'll stay online. Thank you.
All right, all right. Well, moving ahead, we have with us Advocate Navneet Kumar, and he's a partner. We have with us Advocate Mr. Navneet Kumar. He's a partner with corporate law. Something is wrong here. Okay, can you hear me now? Yes. I'd like to welcome the advocate, Mr. Navneet Kumar. He's a partner with Corporate Law Group. He did his BA LLB from Symbiosis Law School, Pune, and LLM from University of Warwick, England. He has a standing of more than 15 years at the bar and works in multidisciplinary areas of law. So over to you, Mr. Navneet, and you'll be talking about the experience with tobacco control policies and recommendations. So over
Thank
to
you so much. And first of all, I congratulate Policy Circle for organizing this event. And it's very heartening to see so many youngsters here, youngsters who are present today to listen to us. And I have also got the honor of listening to so many eminent personalities before me. So when we talk about regulatory confusion, then what is regulatory confusion? Regulatory confusion basically leads to uncertainty, which in turn leads to instability, and instability in fact leads to chaos and scams. So when we talk about the present globalized world, the absence of a clear regulation in fact leads to, say, multiple problems faced by all the countries. And when we talk about India, the absence of a clear regulation not only affects ease of doing business, but it also affects public health at large. I'll explain how. Now, my colleague Minashiji, she pointed out about the 2019 blanket ban on e-cigarettes, where the government, in fact, on the floor of the House, floor of the Parliament, said that, in fact, there was no scientific study which was conducted by the government to analyze basically the ill effects of e-cigarettes before the actual ban came. And when we talk about WHO, so WHO on record has said that tobacco use is a major risk factor for many chronic diseases, including cancer, lung diseases, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. It is one of the major causes of death and disease in India and accounts for nearly 1.35 million deaths every year. India is also the second largest consumer and producer of tobacco. Now, when we talk about tobacco deaths, so many unfortunate deaths happen because of tobacco in our country. So what are we actually doing about that? So tobacco harm reduction is on the radar of the government, has been on the radar of the government since long. But how do we achieve that? In my view, because I've been associated with this realm for about now more than 7 to 8 years, what I have seen is that harm reduction alternatives to tobacco users is one of the major things that can actually lead to, say, a reduction in these disease burden as well as the deaths. Now, when we talk about 2019, I clearly remember that during the parliamentary debate, many MPs, several MPs in fact, urged the government that e-cigarettes and like products like heat not burn products, which is itself, it is in fact a heated tobacco device, is a hasty decision by the government and not backed by any scientific evidence. In fact, the whole is a unfortunate thing about the regulation in India is that the regulatory setup in India is that whenever there is a novel thing, we first think of just banning it, and then we spend years in overturning that ban because of advocacy, like we've been doing in this realm. So whenever a novel thing comes, we just ban it, and then it takes 10 years, 15 years to overturn that ban. Now, if you see that it's quite, I am quite amazed to see that a cigarette is available to youngsters. You can just go to a nearby pawn shop, pay 10 rupees and have a cigarette. But it's like a likewise tobacco product, which is HNB, a heated tobacco stick, is like is not available to youngsters because the government feels that it is harmful to the general public health. Now, I may also point out that heated tobacco sticks, we say the examples of Japan, Japan was mentioned about, you can say, this is the data of October to December 2022. Now, HTPs basically constitute 36% of the total tobacco consuming population of Japan. It is a major success. Around 66 countries are now using this product. And these are all developed countries, mind you, mostly developed countries. So when we talk about regulation, so regulation is something which like is an answer to ban. You regulate it. So you regulate these products and ensure that it does not end up in the hands of youngsters. So there is a system in place and you give a choice to the smokers. Smokers have a choice that, okay, if I don't want to smoke, I can switch to these products. Now, we have got tobacco cessation programs of the government, but are they working? I'm asking the youngsters, do they actually work? How many smokers switch? How many smokers leave smoking? There is, I'm talking about government data only. So you give an alternative to the smokers, a choice basically to choose between them. And I'm saying that the government should conduct a detailed scientific review of these products. And I'm saying that an independent scientist, don't listen to us. I'm not saying that whatever I'm claiming or whatever the any company or any individual claims, just go by that. Just have a scientific review, have your own independent scientific review. Here, what you do is a novel product comes, you straight away ban it, taking a high ground of public health. And thereafter, there is an advocacy to overturn that ban. Now, I also must point out to the youngsters that, in fact, even US FDA conducted a study on heated tobacco products, and the US FDA says that that all these products were authorized for in the US market for promotion of the public health cause, as the product produces fear of lower levels of toxins than those produced by combustible cigarettes. Now, I have my colleague Ms. Meenakshi, then Dr. Nimesh Desai, Dr. Harper, they have all spoken about these things. I will not go into them in detail. But the only point is that when we are talking about a regulatory landscape, if we are targeting, say, after 15 to 20 years, we want to become, see, one of the, you can say, the top 3 economies of the world, then a proper regulatory landscape is very much required even for the purpose of ease of doing business, even for that purpose. And public health becomes a major part of it, because any policy of the government has to first ensure that the general public health of the citizens of the country are in the perfect condition. So, what I personally feel is that uh, when we talk about this regulatory confusion, what the government should do is the government should involve the stakeholders, should go on for a stakeholder consultation on these topics. And then when we talk about tobacco harm reduction, so yes, we support tobacco cessation activities and programs of the government as well. But then you also allow the lesser harmful alternatives, conduct your own scientific review, but allow the lesser harmful alternative, so that the smokers have a choice. Smokers have a choice, and then it also it will. We have a firm belief that it will basically help the government in its tobacco harm reduction policies, and it will also help reduce the cancer burden of the country due to tobacco and the deaths that are happening due to tobacco. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Navneet. I think that was a very practical assessment of the law and everything that you gave us. And so we, as even Dr. Nimesh Desai was saying, that now is not the time to brush things under the carpet. So I think that has come out very clearly in what you just said. Well, so now we have with us Dr. Puneet Jain. He's a clinical psychologist and life coach with over 25 years of rich experience. He specializes in counseling and uses various modalities of therapies in order to help the client overcome his mental health concern. He has done his PhD from Delhi University and is a certified happiness counselor. So, welcome, sir, and I'd like to hand it over to you now.
A very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you so much for this beautiful invitation that you have extended to me. So, as I will begin, it's oral cancer. This is on the rise across the globe, and India also. Almost 5,500 people are joining this gang every day in India and in the world also. And 20 lakh people are joining almost in a year, and and 3,700 people are dying every day because of all these problems that is happening across the globe. That that is almost around 13.5 lakhs a year, and they are dying because of the painful deaths, because of the cardiac results, because of the respiratory, smoke, stroke, or cancer, and other 200 registered diseases which have been mentioned. Everyone says कि cigarette छोड़नी है, but कैसे? Do we still have the answer to this question of how do we leave the cigarette? Unfortunately, we have tried all our level best across the globe, but we are still at the same level from where we have started. So, using the tobacco cessation plan with dedication would be the ideal way of leaving it. So, carrying it forward, we need to use SAVE as the youth program that says SAVE. This is an acronym which says sensitization, assistance, voluntary training, and enforcement. When we do all these things regularly and continuously, we'll be able to achieve our task of overcoming this menace of smoking. At present, India has 1.40 billion people, which is comprising 65% who are under 35 years of age, who are really vulnerable when compared to EU, with 2.2 in villages in India being second biggest producers of tobacco, with the second largest consumers of tobacco also. In India, there are 55% population who prefer chewing tobacco, where men comprises of 3% and women comprises of 87%. Bidis, hookahs, chillums are safer when compared to cigarettes and are cheaper in India. Young generation, that is Generation X, who want choices, at the same time, but don't want to listen to what the elders are telling to them. So can we afford a nicotine, and can we afford it? It can be used by giving them nicotine patches or nicotine gums, where the level of the nicotine only goes in, whereas the other harmful products do not go in or are not being exposed to the environment. So in fact, no tobacco is best option, but to quit is it for at least 3 to 4 cycles for 21 days. That is, quit smoking for 21 days at a stretch for the 3 to 4 cycles. This will actually work as a habit formation of going against the smoke, and so this will create the people going away from the smoke. So regulations need to be implemented strongly. That is, there should be reasonable and just, as well as facilitators rather than obstructions. The reason cigarette has more chemicals, that is 600 chemicals are there, which create 7,000 odd chemicals, out of which 69 are carcinogenic in nature. According to WHO, there will be 1 billion smokers in the world by 2025. Heated tobacco products have led to decline uh, declined by 5 times in Japan since the time they were made available in 2014 by FDA approval in the US. That's what Dr. Harper also just told us. So we can also learn from the same and produce for a better and a healthier environment. And for the benefit of the people, we need to have a strong propaganda right from the school level, going up to the higher levels in society, where it should be complete ban on cigarettes or tobacco-related products, with high penalties on the manufacturers in the form of taxation, as well as high penalty, as well as strong punishment to people who are selling to underage. So that's my message to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Puneet. I think that was really nice that you spoke about the ways of quitting smoking and how the law needs to be enforced and implemented.
One thing more,
Yes.
they need to be counseled regularly.
Yes.
The students right from the school level, they need to be counseled and they need to be taught. Like smoking is no, and it is no means no. And anybody caught smoking, they should be advised to meet a counselor at the earliest or a psychiatrist for quitting smoking program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please.
Okay, ma'am.
Dr. Please, I think you really brought up very, very pointed points,
Yeah.
which are they are doable, but we need to also think of that how much, time we do have, in the school curriculum, and the teachers are convinced to talk about this. So that's where we need to kind of focus on that it should find a place in the addressable, whether we talk from fourth standard, fifth, because as I told you, we were starting, look from the fifth class, and I could never imagine that, a child will be starting, smokeless tobacco, maybe smoke which we never knew, kind of. But then the history showed about the smoke. But then important is that our parents, teachers, everybody has to be convinced. Because if teachers who are supposed to be role models also need to be doing
Absolutely.
kind of. But we also have a major challenge because we all talk about school children. What about children who are out of school? So how they need to be brought into the gamut, that is very, very important because I looked at, 2 studies with regard to children who are out of school, and particularly it's most of the times first the females are dropping out because of the financial reasons or household chores also. So we need to look from that part, and we need to find out the ways and means of how to address these children. Thank you so
So
much.
here I would advise we should have more awareness camps. We should have more awareness skits as well as plays. as well as the children at the younger age, who are in fourth standard or fifth standard, they are more aware of the sex education now because they've been subtly told about rather than people children who are in eighth or ninth standard. So they are not going against the word of sex in schools or as they grow up. Similarly, there should be education on smoking also, all these harmful products, which are ultimately creating harm to all of them as they grow up. As well as they should be also told about if their parents are into all this, they should be also told to meet a psychologist or psychiatrist, as well as join this no smoking campaign program run by the government of India.
Thank you, Dr. Puneet.
So we need to go a little stronger on this.
Right.
That's what I would suggest.
Well, friends, we are delighted to have on the panel Dr. Rogelio Varela. He's joining us from Philippines. His focus today will be mainly on specific experiences and concerns about THR implementation in the Philippines and other East Asian countries. A few words about Dr. Rogelio. He's a urologist surgeon practicing in Manila, Philippines. Currently, he serves as chair of the Department of Surgery of Healthware Qualigned Hospital. He is also a professor of psychology at the College of Medicine at the Bulacan State University. In addition to his clinical and academic roles, he is the CEO and founder of the Manila Kidney and Prostate Care Center. Throughout his career, he has been an advocate for preventive urology and health harm reduction. He believes strongly in empowering patients with education and early detection to prevent progression of urologic diseases. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Rogelio. It's over to you now.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I think tech support acknowledged receiving my pre-recorded video. Is it available?
Yes, sir. Just a moment, please.
Thank you. I am Dr. Rogelio Varela Jr., a urologist practicing here in Manila, Philippines. Thank you for inviting me to speak about the Philippines' experience on the legislation of the vapor law, as well as the effects of cigarette smoke in the genitourinary system. The global prevalence of current tobacco use has declined by over 30% from the year 2000 to 2020. And this was observed from the World Health Statistics in 2023, published by the WHO. And in the year 2000, worldwide prevalence of both genders is at 32% and declined to 22.3% in 2020. Although there is evident decrease among all regions, it is observed that the Western Pacific region, to which the Philippines belongs, has the slowest progress in terms of decline of cigarettes smoking cessation. And the Global Action Plan for Prevention and Control of NCDs has set a target to reduce the current tobacco use prevalence by 30% between 2010 and 2025. Although the rate of reduction in the prevalence slowed in the period from 2010 to 2020 as compared to 2000 to 2010, there will be continuous downtrend in the Western Pacific region being the slowest. The Global Adult Tobacco Survey in 2021 observed that there are 14 million Filipino cigarette smokers and 117,000 die annually. And with these numbers, it was observed that there is only around 4% quit rate. Various nations around the world shared its own experience on their fight against the deterrent effects of cigarette smoking in their society. And the Philippines struggled to put into law stems back in 2013 when one of our senators filed a bill to regulate electronic cigarette. And for the next 3 to 5 years, more bills were filed to regulate the use of the vaporized nicotine products. So in July 25, 2022, the Vaporized Nicotine and Non-Nicotine Product Regulation Act was born and called as RA 11900. And under RA 11900, it promotes tobacco harm reduction as a state policy. It sets a differentiated regulatory framework from smoke-free alternatives and curbs illicit trade and ensures tax collection, and of course protects minors and non-smokers and consumers. And for it to differentiate and define tobacco harm reduction among other products, the government shall regulate the importation, assembly, manufacture, and sales of the packaging, distribution, use, and advertisement promotion in order to promote a healthy environment and protect its citizens from vaporized nicotine and nicotine products. And since it is a differentiated framework, it provides a separate regulatory framework governing vapor products and HTPs, and defines vaporized nicotine and non-nicotine products as a novel consumer goods that generate aerosol and not combustion. It also requires differentiated health warnings for the packaging of vapor products and HTP consumables, and requires designated vaping areas in all indoor public places with strict standards for use where minors and smoking combustible cigarettes are not allowed. And in order to protect minors, the bans the sale and use of minors of vape products, and bans the sale of and advertising and promotion of vape products within 100 meters of school perimeter and playground. It also requires POS signage. The sale or distribution of vaporized nicotine and non-nicotine products to or by persons below 18 years old is illegal. And of course, bans the display of products immediately next to the products of particular interest to minors. It also bans the use of flavor descriptions and product communications that unduly appeal to minors in vape products, and penalizes with fine imprisonments for persons who will sell to minors. For the packaging and health warnings and the POS signages, it requires graphic health warnings and textual warnings with the penalty of fine imprisonment, and requires product health warnings, as I have mentioned earlier. And it also prohibits the importation and manufacture of vape products that do not comply with the local Bureau of Internal Revenue, and prohibits the sale of vape products on the internet if the retailer is not registered on the Department of Trade and Industry or Securities and Exchange Commission. Another included for the ban of illegal products would require the registration of manufacturers and importers of vape products with the Department of Trade and Industry, and requires the internet website e-commerce platforms will only allow online sellers that are registered to the local DTI and BAR. With all these, we have seen support from medical experts, consumer industry groups, and the government agencies. And for the past few months, since the law was enacted, we have gained support from different agencies of the government. But it does not end there. Of course, the next steps would be building more advocates in the civil society and government, continue education on educating smokers and cessation options, and monitor and advocate for faithful implementation of the vape law in the local government. And of course, promote government-to-government dialogue on the global best practices on the vape regulation, as we are doing right now. So the ideal framework for this vape law here in the Philippines includes a differentiated regulatory framework which recognizes the difference between combustible cigarettes smoking versus smoke-free products. It supports accessibility, which provides smokers reasonable access to regulated and quality-less harm alternatives to cigarette smoking, and of course protects its consumers and industry as it protects the youth and the non-smokers to combat illicit trade and ensures collection of taxes. But the question there is, as a urologist, why do I advocate for tobacco harm reduction? So whenever we talk about cigarette smoke and its deterrent effects on the human body, we'd almost always think of two disease entities. First would be the chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, which will include your emphysema and chronic bronchitis. And the next one would be, of course, your lung cancer. However, unknown to many, cigarette smoking can also cause a lot of diseases in the genitourinary system. And this will include, number one, for the kidneys, it can cause kidney stones. There are evidences that would say that cigarette smoking is actually a risk factor for one to develop also for kidney stones. And of course, kidney cancer is one of the dreaded diseases that can be seen, no, for almost all tobacco smokers. And cigarette smoking has been a very high risk factor for one to develop kidney cancer as well as urinary bladder cancer. And of course, cigarette smoke can also cause interstitial cystitis, irritable urinary bladder, as well as incontinence. And as I've mentioned earlier, it will also include, of course, your urinary bladder cancer. And cigarette smoke can also affect your prostate. In fact, there are studies that would say that it can actually contribute also to the prostate cancer. And there are also evidences that would suggest that tobacco smoking is also associated with inflammation of the prostate, which will include your prostatitis. And of course, one of the more common um, effect of cigarette smoking would include your erectile dysfunction as well as infertility. So that is why we as urologists we are very supportive of cigarette smoking cessation. And with that, we would really want our patients who are smokers to stop smoking. And there are evidences that would suggest that once a patient starts to stop smoking, there is also an observable cessation of diseases once you stop smoking, which in this particular slide would suggest that smoking cessation will actually decrease the risk for renal cancer. And it also will improve erection will actually improve after smoking cessation, and of course improve the sperm production. And that is why we have been supportive of the vape law here in the Philippines, because it has been an option alternative to cigarette smoking has been an option for those who are not able to really quit smoking. But again, as a urologist, as a doctor, we would always advise our patients to stop smoking, and because once we stop smoking, it's going to decrease the risk for one to develop all of these diseases. So we have to embrace a healthier tomorrow and choose life, choose wellness, and choose a smoke-free future. Good morning again, and thank you.
Thank you so much for that productive presentation, Dr. Ruggiero. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, friends, we just have a little bit of time for taking, say, about 2 or 3 questions. And I think there was somebody waiting here right behind Dr. Desai. I could give him a chance. Yeah, you had a question? All right. Oh, so that's a long discussion. All right. So anybody else with a point? No, someone who's not been given a chance yet. So you haven't been given a chance? You already asked one question, didn't you? Okay, you didn't. All right, all right, all right. Okay, so please keep them pointed and short questions, right? Go ahead. What's your name?
Okay, ma'am. I am Sarfaraz, a media student from Jamia Millia Islamia. My question is, in Haryana, the culture of using hookah is very popular, and there it is determined as a thing of cultural honor. In the use of hookah, is the use of hookah harmful? Further, I would like to add the youth of Haryana in indulging in various forms of smoking and consumption of tobacco. A photo which is Dr. Nimesh Desai sir. So through his presentation, a small child having cigarette, edge of my knowledge, it is from the Nuh district of Haryana. So my question is how we can conquer or overcome over this problem.
Dr. Desai is already scratching his head. Yes.
The claim is that hookah, even with tobacco use, is less harmful because some of the carcinogens get filtered. वो जो पानी का बल्ब होता है ना उससे, लेकिन हुक्का यूज विथ निकोटिन और टोबैको would definitely be considered harmful. There's no doubt about that. What I also appreciate is that there is hookah use without nicotine use, just for the flavor, right? Like the hookah bars in Delhi and Dubai, and which I like, incidentally. Yeah, but the government of Delhi seems to have banned it. young person's tobacco use is a little difficult to control unless you only set by example. See, allow me to say this. We are today talking about harm reduction because that's one part of the major debate. Uh, Allow me to break into Hindi, and I hope you're okay with that. Uh, जिनको जिनको व्यसन की बीमारी, लत की बीमारी हो गई है, वो अक्सर नहीं छोड़ पाते हैं, इसलिए हार्म रिडक्शन करिए। अगर छोड़ सके तो छुड़वाइए, ना छोड़ सके तो निकोटिन रिप्लेसमेंट करिए, जो भी करिए। लेकिन इसका मतलब ये कतई नहीं कि प्रिवेंशन पे फोकस ना हो। So I think I heard Puneet say and many other friends say, surely prevention and increased awareness and everything that Ma'am Sunilali was saying is of course important. But I am very realistic. मैं 30-40 साल में सीख गया हूँ कि भाई आप दुनिया को राम राज्य नहीं बना सकते. Sorry, no reference.
And this is more like, finding a choice between the devil and the deep blue sea. It's as bad or as good as that. Yeah. So, any more questions? Yeah. Is there anybody? All right. Well, then we come to the end of this conference
Go with
today.
the right message. That is important
Yes.
part. कि ये नहीं aim for the, we say there is gold standard. वो नहीं है तो आप आइए, but don't go with this message कि सब चलता है, ये है. That is
Yes.
important.
Aim for the moon and you'll fall among the stars, as they say. So that should be good enough, if not very good. All right. So you all will be delighted to know that we were joined by about 1,000 people on YouTube who were, who were part of this conference. So yes, a big hand for everybody who's watching on YouTube. And thank you so much. The guest, I have a special thank you for you all for taking time out on this winter chilly morning, that too with the rains and with your compare getting stuck in the traffic. And the students also getting up early and coming all the way here for this conference. I do hope that you were able to carry something home, something fruitful, and something that you also will be able to share with your other friends as well. So thank you for joining us, and do step out, and we have arranged for lunch for you all. So do join us, and over there we can continue with our
One
conversations.
message I would like to give.
Yes.
Anybody who's having some problem with smoke or want to quit smoking, they're having a difficulty, please consult us or come to our counseling sessions. If you are not been able to come on a regular counseling sessions, come online. Go ask for help. We are all there to help you guys.
They're asking for free.
Yeah, we will do free for you. We are not asking for a fees. We'll do
Okay,
free for you.
okay,
We are
Dr.
here to make
Jain and
empowerment.
Dr. Desai, I have one question. Suppose as an actor, sometimes if I need to smoke, because I just did an audition where I needed to smoke. Now I don't know how to smoke, though I try to look very convincing and all that, So will that be harmful if I have to do that once in a while for screen?
No.
All right. All right. So that's the green signal, right? Khush raho. Oh, yes, take good care of yourself. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so I'll say that. So kindly take good care of yourselves. And this is Lottie Alaric signing off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. And I feel that these programs, since we are aiming at tobacco end will, and will only be possible, possible if we are going to have more regular sessions. We can't have utopia, so might as well have. Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. See, we have got all these systems set in. All we have to do is use them. That's it.
Thank you, doctor.
Pleasure meeting you. I'll share my card with you, ma'am.